Hello, readers by eyes and by ears. This is Chan, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In case you haven't already noticed, today is a long one, and I'm going to share with you really quickly why. That's because life has happened, and this entire year I have been learning how to adjust to certain things. So with that being said, we are still doing Monday through Friday. Like I told you all some time ago, I will always do Monday through Friday. It may not be every day, but consistently it has been. But we're going to change things around. From now on, it's going to be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. You all receive videos. Why? Because with everything going on in life, I need a break in between, not just on the weekends. And so I've decided that what I'm going to try to do is to create a longer video on Monday, so that way you'll get the same amount of content, but there's just a day in between where there's a break. So Monday is going to be a longer video, basically 2 videos worth or almost. Tuesday you get a video, not on Wednesday, and then boom, Thursday, Friday. So that is what we're doing. I hope that's okay with you guys, but if not, oh well. So anyway, we are continuing with the reading of Devil Venerable Also Wants to Know, which is also known as 魔尊也想知道 by Cyan Wings AKA. And we're covering chapters 10 through 15. So many. So you can leave your time steps in the comments if you want. I have seen some people do that. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Chapter 10. The Great Tao is Emotionless. Before Baili Qingmiao, the fastest to achieve core formation in Shangqing sect had been Wenzhao, who after reaching foundation establishment at 18, formed a golden core in a mere 3 years. Cultivation was the way of stealing from heaven, more difficult the further you advanced. Tea gathering and tea refining were simple enough, and people of Wulin with good aptitudes could accomplish this. But foundation establishment was the threshold to the cultivation world, and it was a high threshold which blocked countless people aspiring to seek the Tao, who could never advance a single step further. And you couldn't fly all the way to the top just by reaching foundation establishment. There were many people who stalled at foundation establishment for 50 or 100 years, unable to form a golden core until their spiritual energy ran out and their lifespans were up. Qi gathering was absorbing the energy of the cosmos into one's body. Qi refinement was refining it for one's own use. And foundation establishment was using the qi of the cosmos to force out acquired impurities in the human body, acquiring a primordial body. The golden core was formed out of spiritual essence within the Dantian. For the first time, one's spiritual awareness could see within one's own body, and the Violet Palace first appeared within the Dantian. Quick footnote, the Violet Palace is referring to the upper Dantian, which is the head. Okay, back to the reading. The inside of one's body would form its own contained cosmos, and this would be a person's first step toward transforming their body into an immortals. Wenzhao taking 3 years was already exceptional, but as for Baili Qingmiao, she had established her foundation when she just turned 18, and before the year was out, before her master even had time to teach the core formation methods to her, she had inexplicably formed a core. Elder Yuan nodded with approval and smiled slightly. After offering incense to the sect founder, he rang the sect's moon pool bell. The moon pool bell was one of Shangqing sect's 3 great immortal artifacts, supporting the wards around their mountain for years. If it was rung, anyone in the sect could hear it unless they were on the brink of death. Ordinarily, forming a golden core wouldn't be worth the administration hall elder announcing it to the entire sect. Even Wenzhao's 3 years hadn't been worth such treatment. Baili Qingmiao's situation was truly unique, and after deep consideration, Elder Qingyue decided to ring the bell. When it sounded, Wenzhao, who was in bed with Shu Yanyan, also heard. After 3 rings, Elder Qingyue's voice was transmitted to each person's ear. Baili Qingmiao of Rising Clouds Peak, under Elder Qin Rong, has formed her golden core in 1 year. Wenzhao froze, dumbfounded. Yanyan also heard the ringing of the bell, but she wasn't a disciple of Shangqing sect and couldn't hear Elder Qingyue's transmission. She acted as if she hadn't noticed anything and wrapped her arms around Wenzhao's neck, saying, "Dear He, don't be cruel. Hurry." Impeccable acting skills, worthy of the Yuan sect's right protector. But Wenzhao wasn't in the mood and hurriedly got up, using a purification spell to rid his body of any smells. Yanyan turned over, her eyes hazy. "My dear?" "I just remembered urgent business I must return to the sect for," Wenzhao said coldly. "I might not be able to see you for the next few days. Be good and wait for me." Then he turned around and left. Yanyan sprawled over the bed, propping her chin on her elbow. "Once they have their clothes on, they'll act like they don't know you. No good swine. Puh! Baili Qingmiao has returned." A voice came from the window. Yanyan jumped, and when she looked over, she found Wenren E and Yeen Hanjiang had entered through the window at some point. "Oh, it's you, Venerable. You nearly scared your subordinate to death. I thought that my cultivation had dropped and my awareness had gotten so bad that I didn't even notice intruders coming in." Wenren E and Yeen Hanjiang acted like they were blind to the state of Yanyan's body. Yeen Hanjiang used a spell to clean a desk and chair inside the room, opened a window and cleared the smell out of the air with a wind charm, and only afterward invited the Venerable to sit. Yanyan... ... She grimaced and waved a hand, having the clothes on the floor put themselves on her body. She respectfully greeted Wenren E, then glanced at Yeen Hanjiang, and her face stiffened. "Protector Yeen, you're already at the top level of body unity?" Yanyan felt alarmed in her heart. She and Yeen Hanjiang were both the Venerable's protectors, but the left protector had been favored by the Venerable from the beginning. Before, Yanyan would console herself that Yeen Hanjiang was only body unity stage, and though the demonic sword was powerful, using it harmed his body and soul and could not be sustained for too long, or he would be corrupted by it. If they really went at it, she had the upper hand. But in a mere 6 months, Yeen Hanjiang had managed to rise from the first level of body unity to the 9th. Wasn't he about to break through the void boundary stage any day now? The right protector felt quite threatened. However, the Venerable shook his head, seeming displeased. "Only the 9th level of body unity. There's still far to go." This wasn't right. Yanyan felt like she'd caught the whiff of something odd. She looked back and forth between Wenren E and Yeen Hanjiang several times. Yeen Hanjiang was the same, silently loyal as always, and the Venerable was as cold and overbearing as he always was, and nothing about their interaction had changed. The only thing was... Yanyan squinted and found that Protector Yeen was standing a bit closer behind the Venerable than before, and with Yeen Hanjiang protecting his back, Wenren E's posture was also slightly more relaxed. Just slightly, but it gave off a completely different feeling. Alarm bells sounded in her mind, and she hurried to report. "Venerable, for the past half-year, this subordinate has offered herself to Wenzhao, helping him reach nascent soul stage, giving him the chance to participate in important matters of his sect. I have found out the location the nascent soul disciples will be setting up their array. The 5 great forces of Shangqing sect, Tianjian sect, Jiuxing sect, Biluo sect, and Wuxiang temple, as well as several smaller sects, will be sending out their nascent soul disciples to form a giant array north and south of Yuan sect in order to temporarily sever the spiritual veins, so that we won't have access to natural spiritual energy as we fight." Yanyan reported everything she had done over the past months and all the information she had gotten, trying to vie with Protector Yeen. She needed to show him just kissing up to the Venerable wasn't enough. You had to accomplish things. Abusive Romance had described the Great Sect War from Baili Qingmiao's point of view. She was just a core formation disciple and didn't get to know much. For 10 years, it was basically missing her Shixiong, worrying for him, and being concerned for him, all while she saved people here and there, showing off her kind nature as the female lead. Thus, Wenren E had known exactly what plans the righteous sects were making. With Yanyan's information, their schemes were starting to come into shape. This subordinate believes that we should send 2 able fighters to the locations ahead of time and have them take the best positions to break the array, and subsequently exterminate all those nascent soul disciples. Yanyan looked up, and the seductive warmth in her eyes had vanished, only leaving ruthlessness. In her white robe, she seemed like a blooming spider lily, softly beckoning, leading the lost to the next shore. Cold-hearted and merciless, willing to use any means toward a goal. This was the true nature of the right protector of Xuan Yuan's sect, Shu Yanyan. As she spoke, He appeared in the night sky, giving off a dazzling radiance. Just so you all know, He is a star of the Big Dipper, also called the Greedy Wolf Star in Chinese. Returning to the reading, the leader of Shangqing sect was currently with the leaders of several other major sects, observing star signs to predict the ways of heaven. The Jiuxing sect leader looked at the night sky, his expression grave. Polis, Alkaid, and He are all shining, resonating with each other. It is an ill omen. How could this be? Said the leader of Baili Valley. Several months ago, we made our calculations. That He would vanish, subdued by lightning. Alkaid had demonic signs, showing the color of blood, and the possibility of self-destruction would be high. And Polis had signs of peach blossoms, and would meet with the tribulation of love. The 3 stars all had signs of decline. It was a perfect opportunity for the righteous sects to wipe out the demonic. How did fortune suddenly take such a turn? The Tianjin sect leader glared at the sky. 6 months ago, Polis's love tribulation vanished. His protector Alkaid shook off demonic temptation, and He brightened. Everything suddenly changed, and the source is Polis. The Shangqing sect leader said, Polis represents Xuanyuan sect's Wenren E. This man took the world by storm 100 years ago, with a demonic sword wielder behind him, and unified the demonic sects in just a few decades. The balance of power shifted, and the righteous sects have been gradually weakening. If we do not eliminate Wenren E, that one man will suppress the righteous sects for 1,000 years. We had originally planned for Shangqing sect alone to deal with him, but it seems now that will not be enough, said the master of Baili Valley. We must send more high-level experts and immortal artifacts to surround and eliminate Wenren E. The Jiuxing sect master said, The will of heaven is hard to fathom. My sect reads the signs earnestly, trying to glean heavenly mysteries, but often fail. Why is it in this past half year destinies have changed so quickly? Do the heavens not wish for us to see the outcome of the Great War? The abbot of Wuxiang Temple, while reciting a Buddha's name, set down the rosary in his hand, and a monk's staff appeared in his palm. He opened his eyes, and all shades of compassion faded from them, replaced with furious light. He resembled the furious law protectors placed before statues of the Buddha. Abbot, will you act personally? The Shangqing sect master was filled with glee. With you there, we can do twice the work in half the time, and victory will be within our grasp. During the great sect leaders' secret meeting, they set down the time of attack, and one by one returned to their own sects. The Shangqing sect master left the secret room, arriving at the administration hall and asking Elder Qingyue, Baili Qingmiao has risen to core formation stage? Elder Qingyue explained everything to him, and the sect master smiled, gratified. With Qingmiao and Wenzhao, the Shangqing sect has promising successors. We can freely focus on this war. Qingyue Shidi, stay at the sect, protect the Moonpool Bell, and maintain the Shangqing sect's strength. Qingyue knew this battle was unavoidable. He said, But these 2 children are currently squabbling with each other. Baili Qingmiao is having another tantrum. The sect master chuckled. Young girls can be moody. After she reaches nascent soul, she won't be like this anymore. Qingyue and the sect master didn't take the 2's fight very seriously, but Wenzhao was doing everything he could to win over Baili Qingmiao. The reason was, when Baili Qingmiao returned, she immediately went to the administration hall to check her Shixiong's patrol records. This was her first time being away from her Shixiong for so long, and she had just personally witnessed a clash between a wandering immortal and a Mahayana-level expert in the ice plains. Feeling lucky to be alive, she naturally missed her Shishong and wanted to know what he had been doing while she wasn't around. The administration hall's records were publicly available. Baili Qingmiao was at first happy for her Shishong for reaching nascent soul, but she felt something was off the more she looked. Wenzhao was heading down the mountain once every 2 days or so. That was way too often. Baili Qingmiao used to be just about joined at the hip with Wenzhao, and she would follow nearly every time he left the mountain, so she knew well that he left about once a month. Just at that moment, Wenren happened to come to the administration hall to retrieve materials for the medicinal pavilion and found Baili Qingmiao spacing out in front of the jade slip records, so went over to congratulate her for reaching core formation. "Yao Shishong," Baili Qingmiao said, "have you seen Head Shishong? I saw the task rotations, and he's supposed to patrol the mountain today, so why isn't he around?" "He probably left. He's been heading down the mountain all the time lately and even bought a house for Miss Shu, probably out of guilt." Oh my god. Oh god. Wenren was a straightforward person and blurted this out without thinking. He immediately regretted it and slapped himself on the cheek. The jade slip in Baili Qingmiao's hand clattered to the floor. "What did you say? Shishong bought a house for Miss Shu?" Wenzhao got back in that moment, just in time to hear Baili Qingmiao's tearful words, and his vision went dark for a moment. He grabbed Baili Qingmiao and said soulfully, "Shimei, you finally returned. I've been so worried about you these past days. I've missed you so much." Wenren knew he had misspoken and ran off with his head down, leaving Wenzhao and Baili Qingmiao to figure things out themselves. After Baili Qingmiao interrogated Wenzhao, she rushed down the mountain to find Yanyan and question her on her relationship to him, with Wenzhao rushing after her. After she left the mountain's wards, Yanyan could detect her movements. "Venerable, what should this subordinate do?" she asked. "Don't reveal your identity before the Great Sect War. Everything else is up to you," Wenren E said. "Great," Yanyan said with a clap. "I've had enough. I want to get out of here and go back to my cute subordinates. Boo-hoo." She really did tear up. Ever since she had started cultivating, she had never been with one man for this long. She had already gotten enough of the lightning spiritual root and that mysterious power, and risen to the 9th level of void boundary. She'd long since gotten sick of Wenzhao too, and wouldn't have forced herself to endure this much if it weren't for getting information. Wenren E shared a glance with Yeen Hanjiang, then left the room and cast a monitoring spell in the adjoining one to see events unfold. Wenren E was curious what kind of choice Baili Qingmiao would make this time, after knowing Wenzhao's actions. The other room in Shu Yanyan's house was a servant's room, but since she didn't have any, it stayed empty, with only one small bed placed in it. After Wenren E sat down on it, Yeen Hanjiang couldn't stand behind his back anymore, so stood at his side. Wenren E tugged him down. "Sit." Yeen Hanjiang, seemingly overwhelmed, sat shoulder to shoulder with the Venerable on that small bed, his throat bobbing slightly, his eyes downcast. He didn't dare to look at their shoulders, which were barely half an inch apart. They waited for a while, but Wenzhao and Baili Qingmiao still hadn't arrived, probably arguing with each other on the way. Wenren E sensed Yeen Hanjiang by his side open his lips slightly, as if he had something to say, and said, "Just say it." Yeen Hanjiang, hearing an order from the Venerable, no longer dared to hide, and after some hesitation spoke. "The Venerable's path of slaughter is for the purpose of preventing deaths and protecting living beings. So why start the Great Sect War and bring chaos to the common people?" He wasn't any sort of good person, and hadn't minded earlier when Shu Yanyan had spoken of exterminating all those righteous sect disciples. No matter what the Venerable wanted to do, he had no objections. But there was a hint of confusion within his heart, and he didn't understand why the Venerable was doing this. If he already knew about the Great Sect War, couldn't he avoid it? This didn't seem like the Venerable's doll. Ordinarily, Yeen Hanjiang would never take the initiative to speak up, but now the Venerable had asked first. Alkaid should not question Polis, so Yeen Hanjiang decided to confide in the Venerable and allow him to clear his doubts. Wenren didn't answer his question, instead asking, "Protector Yeen, what do you think cultivators are?" Yeen Hanjiang thought for a moment. The elite? He had never considered this type of question before. He just knew that ordinary people would call cultivators esteemed immortal, and cultivators would also think of themselves highly, separating the cultivation world from the secular world when they clearly both existed in the mortal realm. "Wrong," Wenren said emotionlessly. "You, I, and the thousands of other cultivators, whether righteous or demonic, are all a pack of petty thieves who steal opportunities from others' lives." Yeen Hanjiang never realized that Wenren had this judgment of cultivators. "Look at the location of Shanqing's sect," Wenren said, pointing to the distant mountains. "How many living beings could be nurtured by this mountain, abundant in spiritual energy and protected for millennia from natural disasters? If human beings built a city in this area, many millions of people could be born in it in 1,000 years. But Shanqing's sect has less than 100 core formation and above disciples." "The great Tao is emotionless," Yeen Hanjiang said. "The lives and deaths of mortals are nothing to it." He pressed his lips together, thinking back to his slaughtered village. He had spoken of his thoughts toward the heavenly Tao for the first time. "That's true. But the laws of heaven will not allow cultivators to steal opportunities granted by heaven. If cultivators had no internal strife, and everyone focused on cultivating in seclusion without disrupting one another, then after several thousand years, all the spiritual energy in the world would be completely consumed and not a blade of grass would be able to grow. There would be no more life in this world," Wenren said. The purpose of the Great Sect War was not for the righteous sects to slay the demonic, or the demonic sects to slaughter the righteous, but it was that both sides had found through analyzing signs that another heavenly calamity was imminent, and if they didn't relieve pressure through infighting, many more cultivators would die in heaven's judgment, until the world had no more cultivators and no more human beings. Stealing from heaven, deceiving heaven, robbing heaven, that was the true nature of cultivators. They tried to maintain a balance with the laws of heaven, seeking a way of survival. "Whether or not this Venerable dies in this battle, my spiritual energy would still belong to this world. If I died and all my cultivation was lost, the place where I was buried would nurture countless lives in 100 years, Wenren said. He looked calm and indifferent, unconcerned about life or death. Yeen Hanjiang felt a pain in his heart, however, and clutched the demon's sword. "This subordinate will not let the Venerable die." "This Venerable knows." In the book, Yeen Hanjiang had proven his loyalty to Wenren with his life. Wenren patted the back of his head, and his voice held a rare, warm tone. "If this Venerable is gone, you can follow me. Don't be like in the book, living half a life on the order of the Lord of Demons." Yeen Hanjiang, hearing these words from Wenren unintentionally showed a look of relief and said solemnly, "Thank you, Venerable." Chapter 11. Escape by Feigning Death. When reading the book, Wenren had felt that Baili Qingmiao's awareness wasn't consistent and had an obvious bias. Toward her Wenzhao, her fellow disciples, or some of the female rivals, she acted like a fool and believed everything she heard. But whenever her Wenzhao had any suspicious contact with another woman, Baili Qingmiao became unusually perceptive, able to notice something was wrong in an instant. When she was with her Wenzhao, she could always tell when her love rivals were making advances toward him. If Baili Qingmiao hadn't been sent off by Wenren to leave and travel for 6 months, there was no way her Wenzhao could have messed around all day with Shu Yanyan. It would have taken only 1 or 2 times for Baili Qingmiao to notice. And indeed, she figured out something was wrong right upon returning. The entire way down the mountain, her Wenzhao tried to obstruct Baili Qingmiao, but wasn't able to. He could only watch as his Shurmei leapt onto the moonlit frost silk and burst through Shu Yanyan's window without warning. Shu Yanyan was currently taking off an earring in a mirror. She leapt up, hearing the window fly open, and saw a furious Baili Qingmiao, and Wenzhao rushing in after her, while winking furiously at Yanyan. Yanyan pretended not to see Wenzhao, freezing up the moment she laid eyes on Baili Qingmiao. Tears instantly rolled down her cheeks, her legs wobbled, and she fell to her knees. Miss Shu was always a considerate person. Wenzhao had originally wanted to hint at her to not say anything while Baili Qingmiao was distracted questioning her, but it turned out Miss Shu didn't even see him, already too terrified by Baili Qingmiao. "Miss Shu, you don't have to be so polite, even if you're grateful to me," Wenzhao said hurriedly. "You shut your mouth," Baili Qingmiao said, shooting a glare at Wenzhao. She walked over to Yanyan and said coldly, "Why are you kneeling to me?" Yanyan said nothing. She was sobbing so hard she couldn't take a breath, and with a soft cry, she fainted on the floor. What? Baili Qingmiao scooped up that little white flower Yanyan with one arm and pinched the space between her nose and lips hard, waking her. She set her on a chair and said coldly, "Miss Shu, you're a civilian. I wouldn't harm you however angry I was. You don't need to cry." Despite those words, Yanyan started crying again. Miss Baili," she sobbed. "You're the one who saved my life. I cannot face you." Wenzhao paled. Hearing Yanyan's words, he clenched a fist, and were Baili Qingmiao not there, he didn't know what he might have done. Yanyan glanced at Wenzhao's expression from the corner of her eye and chuckled inwardly. They had known each other for 6 months. Yanyan had known countless men and figured out Wenzhao's true nature at a glance. Wenzhao really did love Baili Qingmiao and would always love her more than anyone. The two were childhood sweethearts who no one else could easily get between. But Wenzhao felt there was a clear distinction between his body and his heart. He thought that since he only loved Baili Qingmiao, his heart was pure, and he had done nothing wrong toward Baili Qingmiao. Yanyan was just a temporary mix-up and a way to boost his cultivation. With the Shimei gone, Wenzhao would say all the sweet words in the world to lure Yanyan to his side. But now that Shimei was back, Yanyan was dirty laundry he had to cover up at all costs, and he had no feelings to spare for her. When secretly seeking pleasure, it was only pleasurable if you could keep it hidden. Otherwise, it was nothing but trouble. "Why can't you face me?" Baili Qingmiao turned to give Wenzhao a look, then turned her gaze back to Yanyan. Yanyan said hesitantly, then stopped. "Miss Shu, I will use a truth spell. The truth spell has no effect on someone of a higher level or stronger spiritual cognition than me, but against an ordinary person, I can get anything I want answered," Baili Qingmiao said. Wenzhao, hearing this, continued winking madly at Yanyan. He made a hand seal, trying his best to tell Yanyan that his level was higher than his Shimei's, and he could break the truth spell. Yanyan could say any lie she liked. If anything happened, he would take responsibility. In Wenzhao's mind, Miss Shu had always been a nice and obedient girl, and she knew she wasn't worthy for Wenzhao. She couldn't try to compete with Baili Qingmiao for him. At this time, she wouldn't be willing to, or have the guts to speak the truth. Unfortunately, Yanyan failed to see him again, only staring at Baili Qingmiao with watery eyes. "Miss Baili," she said softly, "I'm a little thirsty. Will you let me have a few sips of tea before I start talking?" "Go ahead. I have time to wait," Baili Qingmiao said, stepping back. Yanyan rose gracefully and took a tea bag out of a box, putting it in a pot. After the tea was brewed, she drank it slowly. She looked toward Baili Qingmiao with a bleak expression and said quietly, "Ever since the meeting in the tea house 1/2 year ago, I have not been able to forget Miss Baili's heroism. After I fell that day, when Miss Baili carried me up to the 2nd floor and demanded justice for me, I felt so happy." Seeing her in this state, Baili Qingmiao's expression softened, and she pulled over another chair to sit in front of Yanyan. Wenzhao also relaxed, feeling that Miss Shu wouldn't say anything out of place. Back then, I thought, if I could live like Miss Baili, it would be so wonderful. Xu Yanyan looked sadly toward Baili, reaching out a pale and ice-cold hand to wrap around Baili Qingmiao's. Baili Qingmiao didn't pull away. She started to think that perhaps she had misunderstood. Her Shijia's feelings for her Shixiong were all written on their faces, plain at a glance, and Baili Qingmiao could see them clear as day. But Miss Shu's eyes held no love for her Shixiong, only admiration for Baili Qingmiao. And she was such a self-respecting woman. She couldn't do something like this. However, Xu Yanyan's words took a turn. She shook her head and said, "But in the end, I'm not Miss Baili. I'm so low, so selfish, so weak. In this world, I can't even live without someone to depend on." "Shimei, I saw that too, so I helped Miss Shu buy a house," Wenzhao said, taking over. "I come check on her once in a while and try to make her live a bit more comfortable. She's someone you saved. So, as your Shixiong, I can't let your kindness amount to nothing." Baili Qingmiao's thoughts were in a tangle, and she actually believed these words. She looked ashamed and said, "Shixiong, I misjudged you. I'm sorry." Wenren frowned, watching from the other room. He really wanted to give Baili Qingmiao a whack on the head. Things would be so much easier if she was dead. "Protector Yeen, would you believe something like this? Can love really make people so brainless?" Wenren really didn't get it, and couldn't help transmitting this question to the only other person there. "This subordinate believes anything the Venerable says, and hears not a word of anything anyone else says," Yeen Hanjiang answered. Wenren shook his head. He shouldn't have asked Yeen Hanjiang. There really was no point to it. Meanwhile, Xu Yanyan watched as Baili, Qingmiao, and Wenzhao embraced each other, all lovey-dovey again after their conflict was solved. Even while hugging Baili Qingmiao, Wenzhao remembered to give Xu Yanyan an appreciative glance. Xu Yanyan returned a beautiful but odd smile. Blood dripped from the corner of her mouth. "Miss Shu!" Only after Baili Qingmiao had hugged her Shixiong for a while did she realize something was wrong. She turned and got a shock to see Xu Yanyan start bleeding from the nose and mouth. She glanced over at the pot of tea and poured it out to discover the tea bag inside actually held deadly poison. Baili Qingmiao frantically held Xu Yanyan, one hand placed against her back, trying to use spiritual energy to remove the poison from her system. Xu Yanyan shook her head with difficulty. She lifted a hand and softly touched Baili Qingmiao's face. "I really wanted to be you," she said with a faint smile. "But my life is thin as paper. Couldn't be you. I'm too ashamed to live. I hope in the next life." Before she could say what she hoped, her eyes closed and the life drained from her. "Miss Shu, why did you take such a desperate way out? I didn't want to hurt you. Even if you and Shixiong really... I would have just backed off quietly. So why did you..." Baili Qingmiao felt Xu Yanyan's cold fingers slide from her face, her heart freezing over. Wenzhao also couldn't have guessed that Miss Shu would use such a method to cover up their secret. Until the end, she never spoke of her relationship with Wenzhao, only her admiration toward Baili Qingmiao. She hadn't even glanced at Wenzhao. Wenzhao also knelt down and said solemnly, "Miss Shu must have been harmed by someone while I wasn't around. Shimei, we need to avenge her." Wenren E. ... Hold on. How did Wenzhao come to that judgment? Baili Qingmiao held up the tea bag she just fished out from the pot. "Look at this mark. This is the tea Shanqing sect uses to give disciples who can't practice inertia yet. And there's this." Baili Qingmiao took a purse off Xu Yanyan's belt and opened it to reveal a strand of hair inside. "Shixiong, isn't this your hair?" Shimei, don't be suspicious of every little thing," Wenzhao said, grabbing her frantically. "I gave her the tea bag. It was what I had left over from before I established my foundation. Spiritual tea is beneficial to the body. Miss Shu had fallen from the second story, and I was afraid she'd hurt her vital energies. So I gave her this tea to help her recover. I have no idea why the tea would be poisoned, or whose hair is in her purse." Baili Qingmiao threw off Wenzhao's embrace. Holding Xu Yanyan's body, she shook her head, saying tearfully, "Shushong, I don't want to look at you right now. I'll go give Miss Shu a proper burial." She left the house with Xu Yanyan. Wenzhao went after her, but she had somehow disappeared without a trace despite having just left, and he had no idea where she went. This was due to Wenren E casting an illusion spell, preventing him from following Baili Qingmiao. Baili Qingmiao's heart was a tangle of emotions. She arrived at a coffin shop in the dead of night, took a coffin after tossing down a silver piece, and placed Xu Yanyan inside. Carrying the coffin with one hand, she flew to the cemetery near the town and dug a grave with the moonlit frost silk, setting the coffin carefully inside. She stared at the coffin for a long time without covering it with dirt. A voice came from behind her. "I can teach you the soul imprisoning technique, so you can capture her soul before it enters the underworld and get to the truth of matters. A living person can lie, but a dead soul won't dare before the soul imprisoning technique." Baili Qingmiao turned and saw Wenren E standing behind her. "Senior," she said quietly, "I've used an illusion to trick Wenzhao, preventing him from following you," Wenren E said. "You can ask questions without fear of him finding out." "Will it cause harm to Miss Shu's soul?" Baili Qingmiao asked. "Naturally. After the soul imprisoning technique is used, she'll miss the emissaries of the afterlife and never be able to reincarnate," Wenren E said, unconcerned. "I can't do that," Baili Qingmiao said. "Miss Shu has had a hard life. I'll send her soul on, hoping she'll be born into a better family next life." "You don't want to know the truth?" Wenren E said. Baili Qingmiao wordlessly bowed her head, looking at Xu Yanyan's coffin. She raised her hand and tossed the first handful of dirt onto it, as if she was trying to bury the doubts in her heart. Actually, Xu Yanyan's words and actions all that time had been telling Baili Qingmiao that she'd had relations with Wenzhao. And because she respected Baili Qingmiao, she felt too ashamed and therefore chose to take her own life with poison before she could be questioned. Baili Qingmiao had guessed all this, but she didn't want to believe it without substantial proof. "Find out the truth, and if Wenzhao really betrayed you, I'll help you kill him." Wenren E stood behind Baili Qingmiao, his voice low like the whispers of a demon. A shiver ran through Baili Qingmiao, and she frantically shook her head. No. Even if Shishong really cheated on me, we only had a verbal agreement and private plans. We aren't yet cultivation partners. At most, we'll each go our own ways. How can I kill him? Plus, Shishong doesn't necessarily... Maybe someone else really set him up. Shishong is a gentleman. He wouldn't take advantage of someone." Wenren E raised an eyebrow. He heard Xu Yanyan sigh inside the coffin. It seemed the right protector also thought Baili Qingmiao. Okay, sorry. It seemed the right protector also thought I just can't. One more time. It seemed the right protector also thought Baili Qingmiao had mental issues. "If you really like Wenzhao, there's another method," Wenren E said. "Turn him into a puppet, so he'll listen only to you and love only you, and never betray you for the rest of his life. Isn't that better?" Baili Qingmiao was taken aback. "Senior, how can you think like that? Love is built on both sides' willingness. It must never be forced." "Then suit yourself," Wenren E said, flashing away and leaving Baili Qingmiao to engrave a headstone for Xu Yanyan alone. After they left the small town by Shangqing sect, Xu Yanyan caught up shortly and they returned to Xuan Yuan sect's main hall. Xu Yanyan rolled her eyes and said, "Baili Qingmiao sure is stubborn. What exactly is good about Wenzhao? This protector has gotten so sick of that lovey-dovey act. Now that I'm finally back, I'm going to have a feast before the great sect war, and taste a few dishes at once." "Oh?" Wenren E said, "You don't get it either? This Venerable thought you would understand Baili Qingmiao's thoughts, since you're both women." "Venerable, if I professed undying love to a man, it would be because he has some value to me," Xu Yanyan said firmly. "If I can get Shangqing sect by flattering Wenzhao, I'll flatter him any way I can." As she was talking, she called over her favorite subordinate, an extraordinarily good-looking man. She held his chin and said, "Dear, tell this protector, what do you like about me?" Her subordinate was at nascent soul stage. He wrapped his arms around Shu Yanyan and said, "Of course, that the protector is brilliant, powerful, and beautiful without compare. This subordinate admires the protector from the bottom of his heart." "Speak properly," Wenren said. The man knelt down with a plop, not daring to speak a word of a lie before Wenren. "Naturally, because I have benefits. I can raise my cultivation, and the protector is an incomparable beauty. It's not a bad deal for me." Shu Yanyan didn't mind at all, pulling up her subordinate. "I really like the way you know what's what. Why didn't you expose your relationship with Wenzhao and make Baili Qingmiao truly give up on him?" Wenren asked. "For the Great Sect War, of course," Shu Yanyan said. "This subordinate was concerned that Wenzhao's mental state would be disrupted by fighting with Baili Qingmiao, and Shangqing's sect would change their plans and not let him participate in the array. The position of each disciple in the spirit-severing array has to be carefully calculated, and the entire layout has to be changed if one person is changed. The subordinate can't mess up Wenzhao at this point. Without the matter exposed, he can coax Baili Qingmiao back to his side and keep his spot in the spiritual severing array. She was going to strike a major blow against the righteous sects in the Great War in order to gain prestige in her sect. How could she let her plans be ruined by something so small?" Hearing her mention of the Great Sect War, Wenren said, "Inform the 4 altar masters to prepare for battle." Shu Yanyan didn't have time for fun when there was work to be done. She patted her subordinate on the chest and said, "Call over a few capable people and wait for me at the energy-gathering array in my cultivation grounds." Her subordinate left happily. Wenren saw Shu Yanyan's indifferent attitude and silently approved. This was the way a demonic cultivator should be. The 4 altar masters, after receiving Wenren orders, immediately gathered at the meeting hall. Before starting the meeting, Wenren made sure to commend Shu Yanyan's sacrifice for her mission and allowed her to cultivate for 10 years in the Xuanyuan sect's forbidden grounds. Every major sect had immortal artifacts, and Xuanyuan sect, as the #1 evil sect, naturally had a demonic artifact defending it. Located in the forbidden grounds was the demonic weapon, the burning sky drum. It was said that during the war in the immortal realm, the blood of countless immortals and demons filled with spiritual energy solidified into this drum. It held terrifying power, but no one in the Xuanyuan sect dared to sound it, only cultivating on its surface. Back when Wenren dueled the old sect master of the Xuanyuan sect, the sect master used the burning sky drum in desperation and actually managed to cause Wenren quite a bit of trouble. But before the sect master managed to kill Wenren, the fighting spirit of demons and immortals that lingered inside the drum invaded his mind, and, in a moment of distraction, he found himself on that ancient battleground. After he suffered chi deviation, the heavily injured Wenren shattered his soul with one blow. The drum was excellent to cultivate on, but if one used it, they would risk their life. After obtaining this reward from Wenren, Shu Yanyan giddily thanked him. She glanced over at the other altar masters and said, grinning, "After this period of cultivation, I might just reach Mahayana stage." "Sure, and get killed by lightning in your next heavenly tribulation," said altar master Qiu Congxue. She was the only female cultivator among the 4 altar masters and cultivated an entirely different path from Shu Yanyan. Shu Yanyan was a bit afraid of Qiu Congxue. She cultivated the Asura path, the most difficult within the ghost path. In order to reach Mahayana, she had willingly entered the hungry ghost path. 50 years later, when she emerged, all that was left of her body was a skeleton and a perfectly undamaged head. Footnote here, both the Asura path and the Hungry Ghost path are part of the 6 paths of reincarnation in Buddhism. Returning to the reading. Qiu Congxue's subordinates were also ghost cultivators. each and every one of them wrapped in black robes. Their heads might be normal, but who knew what their bodies looked like underneath? Wenren glanced over his 6 subordinates, each scheming against each other, all openly hostile with no sense of camaraderie, and secretly very much approved. This was how demonic cultivators should be. Out of curiosity, he directed a question at Qiu Congxue. Altar Master Qiu, if you had a lover and he betrayed you for another woman, yet with his words he kept insisting that he really did love you, what would you do? Qiu Congxue's face was pale and her voice ghastly. This subordinate would never have any lovers, but if I did, I would turn him into a ghost, refine him into a magic item, and keep him in my robes. Xu Yanyan gulped. She knew Qiu Congxue's robes were full of evil spirits and her bones. Wenren sighed inwardly. There really was no point asking these subordinates of his. Chapter 12. The Coming Storm. As Altar Master Yuan managed the main hall, he had the most contact with Wenren and was the best at guessing his intentions. Seeing the Venerable look at them with an expression of, "I can't believe you're all so useless," he hurriedly said, "Is the Venerable speaking of a woman? There won't be much use in asking Protector Shu or Altar Master Chu about women. The Venerable should ask this subordinate instead." Xu Yanyan and Qiu Congxue looked at Altar Master Yuan. "What do you mean, not much use in asking them about women? Aren't they women?" Altar Master Yuan paid no attention to those 2 needle-like gazes on him and continued. "If this subordinate may be so bold, what does the Venerable need this woman to do?" "Not much. Just forget a man," said Wenren. Altar Master Yuan was short and plump, like a jolly next-door uncle. His eyes squinted when he smiled, making him look kindly, but his next words were anything but. This subordinate sees 2 methods. The first, kill that man. The second, find another man and make this woman fall in love with him. Wenren thought for a moment. The first method wouldn't work for now. Baili Qingmiao loved Wenzhao deeply, and if Wenzhao died now, Baili Qingmiao's heart would be stuck on him forever, and she would be trapped by her own obsession and unable to pass her inner demon tribulation at the nascent soul stage. The second method, though, had some merit. But where to find that man? Abusive Romance's love interest number 1 was Wenzhao, number 2, Wenren and number 4, Yeen Hanjiang were already struck from the running. Number 5 was currently less than a week old and couldn't qualify, so the only one left was number 3, Jong-lee Qian. But Jong-lee Qian had debuted even later than number 5. It had been the day Wenzhao wedded the Violet Spirit Pavilion Master. He came to offer congratulations on behalf of the number 1 cultivation clan, the Jong-lee clan, and met Baili Qingmiao, who had been confined to the back mountains by Wenzhao and was trying to escape. That was still 50 years in the future. Wenren didn't have the patience to wait 50 years. He decided that after he recovered from the injuries he would sustain in the Great Sect War, he would go kidnap Zhongli Qian from the Zhongli clan and throw him at Baili Qingmiao, to wait for them to slowly develop feelings for each other. This method might work. Wenren gave Altar Master Yuan an appreciative look. Avoid discussing this matter for now. All right, we should focus on the Great Sect War. After the war, everyone will be rewarded appropriately for their efforts. Understood, said the 5 in unison. For the rest of the meeting, Xu Yanyan revealed the righteous sect's plans, the altar masters offering their own ideas, and they finally settled on a battle plan. After they had each been assigned to their duties, they went their separate ways. After leaving the meeting room, Altar Master Yuan came up to Xu Yanyan and asked, "Protector Shu, is there a woman who has caught the Venerable's eye?" "What?" Xu Yanyan gave him a sideways look. "Do you want to take advantage of his weakness of heart to harm him?" Xu Yanyan spoke very frankly, but Altar Master Yuan waved his hand and said, No, how could that be?" While they were talking, the other 3 altar masters also walked up. Even the frosty Qiu Congxue had a look of, "I heard someone plotting against the Lord of Demons, and I'm interested," on her face. 4 pairs of eyes watched Xu Yanyan intently. Xu Yanyan sighed. You're overthinking it. Trust my years of experience. The Venerable probably isn't interested in that girl. He just wants her as a disciple. He's set on having a righteous sect disciple switch to cultivating the path of indifference, and I have no idea why either. The four altar masters' enthusiasm vanished immediately. Taking a disciple was nothing interesting. Demonic cultivators didn't worry about continuing a heritage like the righteous sects. They stole their cultivation methods and would pass them on to their underlings if they felt like it. Did that count as disciples? Why does the Venerable want to take a disciple then? Asked Altar Master Yuan. He cultivates the path of slaughter. Does he want the disciple to kill him? How would I know? In any case, that girl's aptitudes are really exceptional. She established a foundation at 18 and formed a golden core the same year. It's just that her brain is filled with a man, Shu Yanyan said with a shrug, then left quickly. She still had a feast waiting for her. The other altar masters all nodded as they heard Baili Qingmiao's speed of advancement. That kind of talent really was worth paying attention to. It wasn't too strange that the Venerable would be tempted to take on a disciple for fun. After all his subordinates left, only Wenren E and Hanjiang were left in the meeting room. There should still be 2 or 3 months before the Great Sect War, Wenren E said, and this time you should do your best to break through the void boundary stage, so as to add to your combat strength. Understood, Hanjiang said. This Venerable will take you someplace. Wenren E stood and led Hanjiang to the back mountains of Xuanyuan sect. There was a ravine running through the mountains, the bottom of which was obscured by blackness and could not be seen. This was quite illogical. Even an ordinary person should have been able to see the bottom under sunlight, not to mention a cultivator could use their spiritual cognition to sense something even their eyes couldn't perceive. Wenren E stepped into the ravine and Hanjiang followed, with no sign of hesitation at the foreboding depths. After he flew for what felt like several dozen meters, he landed on a flat, hard surface which didn't feel at all like solid ground. Where are we? Hanjiang said hesitantly. Under your feet is the burning sky drum, said Wenren E, the legendary treasure of the Xuanyuan sect. If back then the old sect master hadn't tried to defeat this Venerable using it, this Venerable would never have known where it was hidden. This was the demonic artifact of the Xuanyuan sect, only authorized to be used by the sect leader. Hanjiang hadn't thought the Venerable had so much trust in him that he would lead him to its location. The burning sky drum may be called a demonic artifact, but it has also absorbed much blood from immortals. Whether it's celestial or demonic in nature depends on how cultivators use it. For these next few months, cultivate on the drum by using the demonic energy of the demon sword to invigorate the immortal energy inside the drum, and raise your own sword cultivation with the clash of the two forces. At the same time, you can weaken the demon sword's essence, Wenren E said. Hanjiang had used the demonic sword to forcibly increase his power, and was already closely linked to it. Even if he created a new weapon, he would have a hard time bonding with it due to it being unable to overcome the demonic sword's remnant power. Only by slowly whittling away at it could he free himself from its influence. Venerable. Hanjiang stood on the burning sky drum, gazing at Wenren E. In all the years Xuanyuan sect had had the burning sky drum, no one had been allowed to see it beside the sect leader. Wenren E allowing Shu Yanyan to cultivate on it was already quite an exception. Hanjiang had never thought he'd stand here before Shu Yanyan. He didn't say anything about whether or not he was worthy, or whether or not he dared. The Venerable had already said that whether or not he was worthy was up to the Venerable to decide. Hanjiang firmed his expression, cupped his hands together, and knelt on one knee. He said solemnly, "This subordinate will put every effort toward breaking through the void boundary stage to sweep away all in the Venerable's path come the Great War. This Venerable doesn't need you to be so desperate." Wenren E raised the hand slightly, and a force lifted Hanjiang to his feet. "Cultivate well. This Venerable will be waiting for you to treat his injuries after the war." Wenren E didn't want to be saved by Baili Qingmiao this time. It was enough to owe her for starting his cultivation. He couldn't afford owing his life to her, too. In the book, Wenren was saddled with 2 heavy debts, which triggered a love tribulation and made him want to give up everything for Baili Qingmiao. Speaking of which, Wenren took out the book, tapping his fingers on the cover, suddenly remembering that the book foretold something else, the arrival of his love tribulation. Were it not for every factor being right, how could Wenren fall in love with Baili Qingmiao? He had met her quite a few times by now, but never had the slightest feeling toward her. He didn't know whether this love tribulation would still arrive, and who would be the target. Wenren tried to guess, but only came to the conclusion that the mysteries of heaven could not be comprehended by mortals, and even he didn't know what would come in the future. Putting away abusive romance, Wenren said to Yeen Hanjiang, "You focus on cultivating. This Venerable will protect you." Yeen Hanjiang, hearing that he would be protected by his Venerable, felt deeply touched. He stared at the demon's sword in his hand. If it weren't for him being so weak that he could not suppress the demon's sword, the Venerable wouldn't have to expend so much effort on him. Wenren left the ravine and sat cross-legged on a mountain peak, closing his eyes and entering meditation as well, as he sensed Yeen Hanjiang's aura below. Before long, he faintly heard the sounds of war drums, clashing blades, and roars that shook heaven and earth. Memories of the demonic war within the burning sky drum had been reawakened by the demon sword, creating an illusory realm. Yeen Hanjiang's sword aura was vanishingly weak within the illusion, like something was obstructing it. Wenren opened his eyes and raised the 7-killing halberd. Killing intent surged around him, like a beacon to illuminate a path for Yeen Hanjiang. Yeen Hanjiang was trapped in the illusion. He felt tiny among mountains of corpses, turning over bodies and searching for his Venerable, panic rising in his heart. As he was on the verge of despair, Polis shone in the sky, and a familiar aura called him back to awareness. That's right, the Venerable was protecting him while he cultivated. Yeen Hanjiang made a hand seal, and the demonic sword appeared. He gripped the sword that had tried to drive him toward madness with this illusion and raised it toward the sky, a bloody aura surging around him. With a single slash, he dispersed the illusion around him. Wenren feeling that familiar unwavering aura, showed a barely perceptible smile. Resting his halberd against the ground, he stood on the summit, silently watching over Yeen Hanjiang. He stood there for 3 months. He stood there until a message came from Yanyan, reporting that the righteous sects had made their move. Their core formation and above disciples had gathered and were now heading toward Yuan sect. "You confront the enemy first. This Venerable will need a few more days," Wenren said, not acknowledging Yanyan's urgency, the halberd in his hand remaining perfectly still. The great sect war would last for 10 years, so a few days would make no difference. Yanyan received the Venerable's response and wanted to rip her hair out. As the master of the demonic sects, shouldn't he be eager to personally massacre the righteous sects right now? What was worth waiting for? Shouldn't they take their chance before the high-level experts showed up to shred the deity transformation and below cultivators and show off the power of the demonic sects? After fuming for a while, she sent a talisman with Wenren order to the 4 altar masters, then picked up a veil and placed it over her face. One of her underlings came and wrapped his arms around her waist, nibbling her ear. "Protector, why are you wearing a veil? It's a shame to cover such a pretty face." Yanyan chuckled. "I'm going to break the spirit-severing array with Qiu Congxue. There's someone there who I don't want to see me for now." "Eh?" the subordinate said, puzzled. How could there be someone who the protector is afraid to face? Yanyan held his chin, her smile fading and the look in her eyes becoming sharp. "It's not fear. Sometimes it's more fun to save a dessert for last." After Yanyan met with Qiu Congxue, they headed to the location of Yuan sect's spiritual veins. Before long, a horde of righteous sect disciples approached, led by a body unity stage elder. Yanyan, seeing them approach, said warily and somewhat frantically, The Yanyan sect lies this way. You are forbidden to advance. The elder said, This is the wicked temptress who practices seductive arts. Everyone, recite the clear mind spell and concentrate on the array. Do not fall for her temptations. The disciples obeyed, taking their places according to their plan. The 108 disciples carried 108 demon-subduing flags, inserting them into the spiritual veins' intersection points and circulating their spiritual energy, forming the spirit-severing array. Wenzhao was reciting the clear mind spell in his mind, but he still felt irritable. Baili had been bickering with him for 3 months now. No matter how he tried to explain his relationship with Yanyan, no matter how he tried to win her over, Baili Qingmiao always shook her head with disappointment and said she wanted to be alone. If he sucked up to her too much, she would give him a pained look and say, Aren't you sad at all that Miss Yu died? Of course he was sad. She had a rare 9 Yeen body, and Wenzhao could raise his cultivation at incredible speeds with her. How could he not feel dejected? But right now, whether he said he was sad or not, it was a lose-lose situation. If he said yes, his Shirmei would say, You really were involved with her? If he said he wasn't, Shirmei would say, You're too cold, not feeling sad at all when a woman you knew died in front of you. Wenzhao understood Baili Qingmiao. She was a cute girl, just sometimes she really was quite a hassle. So he answered her. I was acquainted with Miss Yu, and she died so brutally in front of us. I'm not a heartless person, so there's no way I couldn't be saddened. But we must look to the future, Shirmei. This is the path of a cultivator, and we'll probably have to face many more deaths in the future. We must learn to let go of life and death. He cleverly turned the problem from Baili Qingmiao's suspicion of him to her weakness in the face of death. His Shirmei always listened to him. So she really did start to consider her views on life and death instead and let go of the matter over time. Unfortunately, she still hadn't forgiven him. He hoped that by the end of the war, after Shirmei had experienced the fear of losing him, she would treasure their relationship more. Wenzhao wasn't concerned about Baili Qingmiao's safety. She was at the rearest lines with Yao and Dan, preparing to tend to injured disciples, the safest place she could be. Wenzhao was also quite safe. After the spirit-severing array was set up, the demonic sects wouldn't have access to natural spiritual energy and would soon be rooted. The 108 demon-subduing flags would raise barriers to protect the disciples in the array. It was an immortal-level array, and even if the Lord of Demons himself came, he might not necessarily be able to break it. With the protection of the Body Unity Stage Elder, the 2 demonic sect women were unable to stop them. The formation was complete in no time, and all the spiritual energy of the Xuanyuan sect's mountain range vanished. Wenzhao looked at the 2 women being beaten black and blue by the elder and thought the one in the veil looked somewhat familiar. Perhaps he had bumped into her once while fighting demonic cultivators. Realizing he was spacing out, he hurriedly recited the clear mind spell and concentrated on maintaining the array. The elder noticed the array was complete and quickly retreated, planning to fall behind its barrier. However, the black-robed woman who he had been beating so handily suddenly smiled ghoulishly at him. Her black robe flew open, exposing an eerie set of white bones and countless hungry ghosts winding around her body. The woman only had a head. Below it, there was no flesh at all. Qiu Congxue extended a hand and seized the elder's shoulder with bony fingers. Hungry ghosts leapt onto his body from her fingertips, their ghastly wails chilling his very soul. He tried to disperse them with a spell, but a wave of wicked energy entered his dantian, and he found himself unable to use any of his spiritual energy. The Asura Path! You're Qiu Congxue, the Mahayana ghost cultivator! The elder tried to shout for the disciples behind him to retreat, but a hungry ghost bit down on his tongue, preventing him from speaking. How could a Mahayana stage cultivator be beaten by him? And how could one let them successfully set up an array? The demonic cultivators had planned this. This was bad. That was the elder's final thought. Surrounded by countless hungry ghosts, his consciousness gradually faded, and he was pulled into the hungry ghost path. The elder was from Biluo Valley. Seeing him die, the Biluo Valley disciples were horrified, yelling, "Shushu! Shh!" A white bone finger was placed against a crying disciple's mouth across the barrier. The pale woman bared pure white teeth in a smile and said, "Take care with the array. Don't let your shushu die for nothing. And don't even think about abandoning the formation and running. Right now, the array is protecting you. But if even one flag is removed, each and every one of you will die. I won't let a single person escape." She still had many hungry ghosts under her robes, and before long, they had surrounded the area in all directions. The spirit-severing array was enveloped by a bloody haze that the disciples could no longer see through. They could only maintain the formation. They were the ones who severed the spiritual veins. So why did it feel like they had fallen into a trap instead? The 108 disciples heard Qiu Congshue's voice resonate through the bloody mist. "If the righteous sects want to incite war, our Yuan sect welcomes them with open doors. But we'd rather you come at us in a straightforward battle. I'm not a fan of underhanded tricks like severing spiritual veins." Wenzhao immediately said, "Nobody panic. She can't break through the spirit-severing array. We just need to maintain it, and after our elders win, they'll come to save us. Even wandering immortals have mobilized, so a mere Mahayana cultivator is nothing. Her words were trying to shake us and prevent us from maintaining the array, so she can win without raising a finger. Don't fall for it." His words reassured the group of disciples, who immediately sealed their senses and focused on the array. The power of the barrier strengthened, preventing the vengeful ghosts from approaching. Xu Yanyan had one of her subordinates bring out a couch and lounged on it. Watching Qiu Congshui scare the righteous sect disciples, she couldn't help letting out a yawn and said, "We really are huge villains, huh?" "What?" Qiu Congshui's ice-cold gaze swept over Xu Yanyan's body. "Nothing," Xu Yanyan said, propping her chin in one hand. "This is the true nature of us demonic cultivators. I like being the bad guy." "Be patient. Don't ruin the Venerable's plan," Qiu Congshui warned. "He wants to lure out the high-level experts of the righteous sects to fight them face to face." "Tch! He himself has no idea what he's doing," Xu Yan said, rolling her eyes in an unattractive manner. Said Lord of Demons stood guard at the top of a ravine. The spirit-severing array had not affected the energy of the burning sky drum, so he stood patiently for another 49 days, until he saw a sword aura pierce through the black fog of the ravine. Yeen Hanjiang flew up on his sword, stopping in front of Wenren E. The demonic energy of that restless demon's sword was very weak. Yeen Hanjiang held it tightly in his hand, and it was unable to rebel any more. Second level of void boundary. Pleased, Wenren E clapped Yeen Hanjiang on the shoulder. With the flick of his sleeves, he turned around and called, "Join this Venerable in battle." Chapter 13. Alkaid paves the way. Only now did Wenren E take out the message talisman sent by the 4 altar masters and the right protector, and break one at random to listen to. Xu Yanyan's exaggeratedly panicked voice came out of it. "My God, Venerable, the righteous sects have set up a spirit-severing array, and I and Altar Master Qin have no spiritual energy to use. Oh, I can't go on. I'll just lie here and wait for the Venerable to save us." Wenren E. ... Even though he knew it was an act, Yeen Hanjiang was still angry. "As one of the Venerable's protectors, you still ask to be saved by him? Unworthy!" Wenren E approved of Yeen Hanjiang's words. Xu Yanyan had been top-notch at acting to hook a man, but her ability to fake a loss in battle was too poor. Altar Master Yuan was the opposite. When Wenren E snapped his talisman, his frantic voice came from within. "Venerable, I encountered a large group of righteous cultivators while patrolling the northern mountains, each deity transformation or above. Fortunately, 2 other altar masters were there with me, and we led the rest of the sect into combat. But the natural spiritual energy was suddenly severed, and we could only use our own to fight. We can't last for much longer. We must immediately break the spirit-severing array. This subordinate begs the Venerable to use the burning sky drum." According to these two messages, clearly intended for the righteous cultivator's ears, Wenren should be heading toward the spirit severing away with the burning sky drum in order to break it as soon as possible. Therefore, there would certainly be an ambush on the way to the spirit severing array, with who knew how many high-level cultivators lying in wait. Pleased, Wenren said, "Half a year ago, this Venerable dueled a wandering immortal in the 1,000-mile ice plains. Even though she was of a higher realm, she offered no improvement to my cultivation. Ordinary fights are no longer able to make me advance in realm. Hopefully, the gathered forces of the righteous sex will not disappoint this Venerable." He turned into a ray of light and flew at blinding speed toward the spirit-severing array. Yeen Hanjiang chased after him on his sword, but was completely unable to keep up with Wenren. Previous occasions, Wenren had slowed down to wait for Yeen Hanjiang, but now he didn't hold back. Just by his own light flash, he could surpass the speed of Yeen Hanjiang's sword by several dozen times. Despite having broken through the void boundary, despite having awakened to a higher sword will on the burning sky drum, Yeen Hanjiang was still as powerless as always to keep up with this Venerable. When Yeen Hanjiang caught up with Wenren, he saw him trapped in an array by 20 Mahayana and above cultivators. Seeing this, Yeen Hanjiang's eyes blazed in rage, and drawing upon his spiritual essence, he was about to charge into the array and fight side by side with his Venerable. But just at that moment, he heard a cold and harsh yell. "Stay back!" Yeen Hanjiang froze instantly. Standing outside the array, he saw Wenren turn and smile with satisfaction. This Venerable never expected that the righteous sex would have brought out their highest talents in order to deal with me. This Venerable is very pleased. Protector Yeen, don't ruin this Venerable's fun. Yeen Hanjiang understood Wenren. He had followed him for many years, watching his every action and expression. He could see that the Venerable really was surprised and really was eager. Wenren had high expectations for this war. In his personal analysis with Yeen Hanjiang, they had figured the righteous sex would send maybe 10 Mahayana cultivators, and perhaps some of Shangqing's sex wandering immortals. Wenren thought 10 was a bit low, as he would have a hard time breaking through his realm unless he was on the brink of death. At the least, there were other ordinary disciples to fight. He and Yeen Hanjiang never could have predicted that the righteous sex would mobilize all their forces and actually send 12 Mahayana cultivators, 8 wandering immortals, and a 10th generation Buddhist priest. The 21 experts had set a spell formation in advance and trapped Wenren, swearing to take down the most powerful demonic cultivator here and now. In the book, only Shangqing sect had mobilized their full forces, but this time, the 5 top righteous sects were throwing all they could at him. Wenren-'s laugh echoed through the sky. Yeen Hanjiang heard Wenren-'s joy in his laughter, and could tell that he truly believed it would be fine if he died in this battle. This wasn't what they had planned for. There were too many enemies, and the Venerable truly faced a threat to his life. Yeen Hanjiang closed his eyes perfectly still and opened them a moment later. His eyes were filled with resolution. Wielding his sword, he continued to charge toward the formation. This was the first time he had ever disobeyed Wenren-'s orders. Even if he were to die, he wanted to die before his Venerable. He couldn't take looking on and being unable to do anything as his Venerable faced danger. "Alkaid has appeared," said the Juxing sect master. "If Polis falls, Alkaid will go mad. The two will be eliminated together, lest Alkaid bring disaster to the human realm." A wandering immortal of Shangqing sect tossed out a gold ring, carved in the form of a dragon biting its own tail. It was the second immortal artifact of Shangqing sect, the dragon locking ring. The dragon locking ring could even trap an immortal. As it was about to hit Yeen Hanjiang, a black and gold halberd smacked it with a loud clang. The ring transformed into a golden dragon and wrapped tightly around the halberd. Wenren was right behind it, appearing in front of Yeen Hanjiang and shielding him. Go, he yelled in a low tone. Venerable! Hanjiang gripped his sword, his eyes burning, refusing to take a step away from Wenren E. Wenren E understood him. The Jiuxing sect master was correct. If Polis fell, Alkaid would go mad. There was no way Hanjiang could see his Venerable surrounded by so many enemies and turn away. This Venerable promises you not to die. Wenren E reached out a hand and placed it against Hanjiang's chest. His face was very close to Hanjiang's, close enough that it seemed their lips would touch at any moment. Hanjiang gazed into the Venerable's eyes and heard him say, "In 10 years, the spirit-severing array will be broken. Watch how this Venerable will do it." He shoved Hanjiang with his palm, using immense spiritual energy to force him through a crack that had formed in the barrier when the dragon-locking ring and the 7-killing halberd clashed. Hanjiang saw the barrier seal instantly behind him, leaving his Venerable trapped within with 20 high-level opponents. He was unable to resist Wenren E's force, being pushed into the distance, only managing to stop in the air above the sect's main hall. "Venerable!" Hanjiang let out a pained shout, then merged with the demon's sword and transformed into many red blades, flying toward the north. In the mountains north of Xuanyuan sect, over 100 deity transformation or above cultivators were fighting the altar masters and their forces. After the spirit-severing array had been set, the righteous as well as demonic cultivators were unable to access natural spirit energy. However, the righteous cultivators had come prepared, and in the rear lines, 9 void boundary cultivators manipulated 9 spatial transfer flags, forming a spatial link to continuously transfer spiritual energy from a distant vein. Each of the righteous cultivators carried a magic item linked to the spatial transfer flags, supplying them with spiritual energy. The demonic cultivators couldn't access spiritual energy, while the righteous sects had a steady supply. They were waging a war of attrition, and when the demonic cultivators exhausted their inner supply of energy, the righteous sects would be victorious. A flurry of blood swords tore through the sky like swift arrows. While passing the crowd of demonic cultivators, several whisked around Altar Master Wenren E, forcing him to charge the righteous sect's formation together with them, and causing him to take all the righteous cultivators' attacks. "I'll fuck your grandma, Hanjiang!" Okay. Altar Master Yuan frantically raised his shield, forced to block the attacks coming at him and Hanjiang. Hanjiang ignored Altar Master Yuan's fury. Altar Master Yuan had an earth spiritual root, and the power of the vast earth provided great defensive ability. Hanjiang couldn't make a reckless charge to the spatial transfer flags in the back lines alone and needed a strong defense, so he had picked Altar Master Yuan. Altar Master Yuan was a Mahayana cultivator, but he knew he had to obey Hanjiang at this time. The brat disregarded his own life in the fight and was capable of killing him first if he tried to rebel. While cursing out Hanjiang, Altar Master Yuan yelled, "What are you fools doing? Hurry up and support me and Protector Yeen. I'm gonna get killed if you keep standing around like a bunch of morons." At Altar Master Yuan's yell, the demonic cultivators finally gathered their strength and, disregarding defense, charged forward to open a path for Hanjiang. For the last few years, the demonic cultivators had been forced into obedience by Wenren E, and they all knew that if they didn't fight today, then, if either Wenren E or Hanjiang survived the war, those who hadn't given their full strength on the battlefield would wish they had died. If they died, but their soul was intact, they could seek Altar Master Chiu's help in becoming a ghost cultivator. But if they angered Wenren E, they wouldn't be able to die if they wanted to. The demonic cultivators charged forward without fear of death, and the righteous sects were forced on the defensive. After a bout of fighting, Hanjiang arrived at the back lines in a hail of blood swords. He saw the formation overflowing with spiritual energy created by the spatial transfer flags, and used a portion of his swords to haul Altar Master Yuan to block the array's focal point. "Hanjiang, I ain't fucking your grandma. If we survive this, I'll fucking fuck you. You just wait." Okay. Altar Master Yuan cursed as he was tossed in the center of the array. The only one in Yin Hanjiang's eyes was Wenren E. For Wenren E, he could give his own life, the lives of other people, and even all lives on earth. Wenren E, tossed into the array, was forced to bring out his bonded weapon, the Xuanwu shell. A yellow-brown suit of armor surrounded his body like a tortoise's shell, covering him on all sides, and his body grew until he could block the array. At the same time, the blood swords condensed into 9, demonic energy surging around them, and they flew toward the 9 cultivators' dantians. No one doubted the power of these swords. If they really pierced one's body, even if the violet palace of the dantian was not destroyed, their bodies would be invaded by demonic energy. The 9 experts hurriedly used spiritual energy to protect themselves, but the 9 swords split into 2 the instant before striking, the second charging toward the 9 spatial transfer flags. No one had expected Yin Hanjiang would use the swords formed from his own flesh and blood to attack immortal artifacts. The spatial transfer flags were not quite immortal artifacts, but they surpassed the magic artifacts of the cultivation world and had room to grow. These kinds of magic items were known as near-immortal artifacts. It was akin to striking a stone with an egg or meeting a blade with one's flesh. After a deafening crash, Yin Hanjiang stood above Altar Master Yuan's tortoiseshell, dripping blood from wounds all over his body, 9 tattered spatial transfer flags in one hand. "If you want to fight, then fight fairly." Blood dripped down from Yin Hanjiang's mouth, but his voice rang over the battlefield. "The Xuanyuan sect doesn't fear attack. Our Venerable Lord welcomes any who dare to bring a challenge. But remember this, I, Yin Hanjiang, will not forgive any who try underhanded schemes on the battlefield to harm my lord." With a casual toss, the 9 tattered flags fluttered to the ground. The 9 cultivators watched Yin Hanjiang swaying on his feet, on his last legs, yet were unable to approach. When faced with such resolution, whether from friend or enemy, one could only feel admiration. With the spatial transfer array broken, a weight fell from Yin Hanjiang's chest. With spiritual energy unavailable to both sides, the Venerable surely wouldn't lose. The moment he relaxed, he fell heavily to the ground. Altar Master Yuan's shell dispersed, and he slung Yin Hanjiang up with one hand, carrying him toward his own forces and cursing while he ran. "Pfft, motherfucker, I've lost centuries worth of spiritual essence in this fight. Yin Hanjiang, if you don't fucking repay me when we get back, I'll go find Shu Yanyan and learn the art of plucking and replenishing so I can personally suck you dry." This person makes me laugh every time. Okay. Yin Hanjiang didn't even hear Ren Weiyi's words. A weak smile came to his lips, and he muttered, "Venerable, I won't let you die before me." "Fuck you," Ren Weiyi spat, hearing that. With the spatial transfer array broken, both sides were in the same position, and the victor of this battle was now indeterminable. In the northern mountains, the demonic and righteous cultivators both retreated several meters, assembling the battle formations that Yin Hanjiang had broken, deploying magic artifacts, and preparing for the next clash. Altar Master Yuan, with great effort, brought Yin Hanjiang back behind his own lines and tossed him at the medicinal hall's master, saying, "Fix him up for me, and when he wakes up, I'll kill him personally." He spat blood while he talked. The medicinal hall master said while trembling, "Altar Master Yuan, you should come for treatment too. Your injuries are also severe." "I ain't a weakling like Yin Han." Before he could finish speaking, a purple robe flashed before him, and he collapsed. The feminine and androgynous-looking Altar Master Miao said to the medicinal hall master, "I've put a heart-eating parasite on him, so he'll be unconscious for now. Take the people who can be saved away for treatment, and when they're half healed, I'll toss them back into the fight. No one who's still breathing gets to slack off." The medicinal hall master wiped sweat from his forehead. This wasn't reasonable. All he needed to do was make Altar Master Yuan unconscious. There was no need for such a terrible goo insect as a heart-eating parasite. If Altar Master Miao didn't plan on removing it after the battle, Altar Master Yuan would be under his control forever. Really quickly, a footnote. Goo insects are made by putting many poisonous insects together and having them eat each other. At the end, only one survives and it'll supposedly have gained the toxicity of the others. Basically, usually magic bugs. Returning to the reading. Altar Master Miao raised an eyebrow at the medicinal hall master. His eyes seemed to say, "This master has been waiting for such an opportunity for a long time, so why are you questioning me?" The medicinal hall master was scared of angering any of the altar masters and led his apprentices to carry away the injured for treatment. At this time, the 21 experts who surrounded When-rehn had also paused. The Jiuxing sect master said with concern, "When Polis acts, Alkaid will pave the way. The spirit transfer array has now been broken. We indeed should have kept Alkaid here." Wenren smiled in satisfaction and said, "Worthy of this Venerable's vanguard." Yeen Hanjiang used his every action to declare his loyalty to Wenren. "I never approved of such methods in the first place," said the Tianjin sect master. "We've already mobilized 21 experts to surround Wenren, so why do we need such arrays? We need only set up a barrier and directly attack." "You're gravely wrong, Tianjin sect master," said Wenren. "Without that array, none of you are any match for this Venerable." Amitabha. The abbot of Wuxiang sect took off his monk's robe, revealing the dragon tattoo around half his arm. Divine light shone from his staff, and he said, voice filled with compassion, "I wonder if adding this old monk will be enough." "You're about there," Wenren smiled, as Polis under the support of Alkaid shone with unprecedented radiance in the sky. Wind billowed Wenren's robes as fighting intent surged around him. Even if a Mahayana cultivator didn't have natural spiritual energy, their inner energy was near limitless. The war raged on for 10 years. For 10 years, Baili Qingmiao and the other disciples with Yao Wendan collected countless corpses from their side. The dead outnumbered the injured, and the injuries sustained were more heavy than not. Those lightly wounded received some minor treatment, then had to return to the battlefield. Both righteous and demonic sects sustained heavy blows in the war. And as these cultivators lost their lives, the sun and stars were radiant, and the human world experienced 10 years of prosperity, wars stopping and the dynasty entering a golden age. After 10 years, both sides had exhausted all their spiritual energy. Qiu Tongshue's bony fingers dragged Xu Yanyan out of her halls of pleasure as she said coldly, "The time is near." Xu Yanyan put on her clothes and her veil, saying to Qiu Tongxue, "I know, I'm the key link in this plan. Tell me, since there's no spiritual energy on the battlefield, is everyone just spitting on each other?" "Shut up." Qiu Tongsxue had no desire to chat with Xu Yanyan and tossed her toward the spirit-severing array. Xu Yanyan turned gracefully in midair and descended like a fairy before the array. At the same time, Qiu Tongsxue lifted the blood mist. In the spirit-severing array, Wenzhao saw the veiled woman smile at him and extend a hand, actually reaching through the barrier. How? Wenzhao never imagined that this barrier he'd steadily maintained for 10 years was only by the allowance of the demonic sect, and they could have easily broken it at any time. "Do you still remember me, dear He?" Xu Yanyan said in a soft voice, taking off the veil and showing him a warm and loving smile. Monsieur! Wenzhao was stunned. He felt a pain in his dantian and looked down to see Xu Yanyan had already stuck her hand into it. "Are you confused about how I can enter the barrier?" Xu Yanyan said with a laugh. "This protector can naturally take back the essence she gives out whenever she wants. Don't forget, we've dual cultivated for half a year and our essences are already completely intermingled. Our essences resonate with each other. And if I want to enter, you're effectively a wide open door for me." "Then why did you drag it out for 10 years? Wenzhao was unable to believe her words. "That would be our Lord," Xu Yanyan sighed. He said the spirit-severing array was a bit of it. Otherwise, if we all used natural spirit energy to fight for 10 years, the human world would be drained of spiritual energy. Fields would be barren, and nothing would grow. Now everyone's exhausted and unable to command too much spiritual energy. So it's the perfect time to destroy the array. She tugged lightly with her hand and yanked Wenzhao's nascent soul entirely out of his dantian. What this protector gives out must be paid back with interest. I'll take your nascent soul in exchange. Shoo, have you ever loved me? Wenzhao actually asked such a question as his nascent soul was pulled out of his body. Xu Yanyan curled a lip and said coldly, "The art of plucking and replenishing is the same to me as your righteous cultivators taking in natural spiritual energy. Do you love the spiritual energy you cultivate with?" Wenzhao widened his eyes, as if completely unable to believe such heartless words. "Ah, right," Xu Yanyan said. "Even spiritual energy can be rich or sparse, pure or mixed. To this protector, you're like a particularly boring and self-important mass of spiritual energy, who can't even match up to my darlings." With a harsh yank, she ripped Wenzhao's nascent soul from his body. Wenzhao fell from the sky, and the spirit-severing array shattered. Qiu Tongshue's hungry ghosts immediately entangled with every disciple in the array. Chapter 14. End of the Great War. The spirit-severing array used power that went against the natural order to forcibly change spiritual veins and was an extremely difficult array to set up. It required 108 flags and 108 nascent soul and above cultivators. Nascent soul was already an impressive level among cultivators, and any sect who could deploy more than 50 at once would automatically rank number 1 among the cultivation world. 108 nascent soul disciples required the collective power of all the righteous sects to gather, and if they were missing even one person, the array would disperse, and all their efforts would be for naught. The sects had been highly selective in choosing the disciples in the array, afraid one of them might have dealings with the demonic sect, or their will wouldn't be firm enough and they would be influenced by inner turmoil. All 108 disciples they chose were future pillars of the righteous sects. Only when they were sure the array wouldn't be broken did they feel free to attack the demonic sects. They never thought that Xu Yanyan had planted a time bomb in the righteous sects 11 years ago, and now, 11 years later, it disrupted the spirit-severing array and shook up the righteous sect's entire plan. In mid-air, the white-robed woman held a righteous cultivator's nascent soul in one hand and stuffed it carefully inside her magic weapon, an unopened spider lily. Xu Yanyan's bonded weapon was a near-demonic artifact as avaricious and bold as she was. It demanded to be fed a nascent soul every time it was used. After devouring Wenzhao's nascent soul, the spider lily slowly opened, and amid Qiu Tongshue's ghosts, flowers bloomed into a blood-red path, like the one that led lost souls to the afterlife. The remaining 107 disciples watched these two beautiful yet wicked women with despair, and gradually lost consciousness among the fragrance of the spider lilies. "Xu Yanyan!" Qiu Tongxue yelled. "Your flowers devoured several of my ghosts." You know my lilies," Xu Yanyan said unconcernedly. "Even I can't control them. They'll eat whoever they want. Are you capable of controlling your ghosts? Every time I get near you, I can hear the sound of those ghosts gnawing on bones. Doesn't that hurt? No wonder you can never beat the Venerable, even at Mahayana stage. You can't even control your own weapons. That's so pathetic." The two women continued taunting each other while mopping up the enemy forces. Qiu Tongxue grumbled, "The Venerable won't even let me eat any of their souls. I can't take it." She ground her ghastly white teeth. "The Venerable said that dead cultivators can reincarnate into ordinary people in their next life, so unless there's a deep grudge, there's no need to destroy someone's soul," said Xu Yanyan. "Us killing cultivators is those who defy heaven by killing others who defy heaven, so cosmic law won't assign us any crime. But destroying a soul is messing with the system of the 6 paths of reincarnation. It'll be punished by the heavens, and our tribulations would be harder to pass." He's a demonic cultivator who'll kill people without a thought, but he has hang-ups about weird things? Qiu Congxue said disapprovingly. After I first stepped down the Asura path, I never thought of turning back. Shu Yanyan shrugged. You can disapprove of the Venerable all you want, but you gotta be able to beat him first. In Xuanyuan sect, might has always made right. Alongside the blossoming of Shu Yanyan's spider lilies, Dove He was slowly colored red in the sky, shining down with bloody light. Indeed, the Juxing sect master said, these 3 stars, Polis, Alkaid, and Dove He, are our greatest obstacles in this war. The Biluo Valley master said, then it's fortunate we still have a backup plan. Amitabha. The Wuxiang temple abbot slowly flicked the prayer beads in his hand, and after reciting a Buddha's name, he tossed them into the air. At the same time, Shu Yanyan and Qiu Congxue saw above their heads a peacock shining with multicolored divine light. Under the light, the spider lilies withered. Shu Yanyan's smile froze on her mouth, and she said dully, no way. The Buddhists have even called in the great peacock wisdom king? In Buddhist teachings, it was said that the peacock was born from the phoenix and liked to eat people. One day, she devoured the Buddha, who cut her stomach and escaped and wanted to kill her. The other Buddhas dissuaded him, believing the peacock had a destiny to be reborn, so he sealed her in a spiritual mountain and gave her the title Mother of Buddha, Great Peacock Wisdom King Bodhisattva. The Peacock King was said to have the power to protect from disasters, cure illnesses, and prolong life. Shu Yanyan's flowers and Qiu Congxue's ghosts were both powerless under its might. Under the Buddha's light, the spider lilies wilted, and the vengeful ghosts re-entered the paths of samsara. Shu Yanyan had it a bit better. Even if minds were cleared of desires under the Buddha's light and the power of her charm was weakened, it didn't harm her foundation. However, Qiu Congxue was a ghost cultivator, and she was in danger of being released from the world into samsara, her very life at risk. With a couple dozen remaining nascent soul disciples, 18 took off their wigs and exposed bald heads, sat cross-legged, and began reciting sutras. Oh God. What's going on? Shu Yanyan cried. I never heard there were a bunch of monks in the array. I can't do anything to them. Qiu Congxue chuckled in the midst of the Buddha's light and said, just now, we've killed or injured most of these righteous disciples, and the rest are low on spiritual essence and can't fight anymore. Our duties are done already. Just wait for me to destroy the Wisdom King avatar so you can escape. Are you crazy? Do you want to be sent on? Shu Yanyan said. Is Qiu Congxue someone who will sacrifice herself for others? Oh, you shut up. Qiu Congxue gave Shu Yanyan a kick and flew upward. Many bones extended from her body, blocking the Buddha light for her. A string of prayer beads was faintly visible in the light. Qiu Congxue could smell her own body burning, and her shield of bones gradually dissipated under the light's assault. She found it. Reaching out boned fingers, she grabbed the prayer beads and threw them into the distance. Shu Yanyan heard a terrible cry come from Qiu Congxue, and her silhouette vanished in the light. The 18 monks all spat up blood. In this fight, in which neither side had attacked, there ended up being no victor. The Buddha's light vanished. Shu Yanyan glanced at the beaten and bloodied righteous cultivators and the monks who had no power to fight. Her smile faded, and she said lightly, "You can go." The crowd stared at her uncomprehendingly, having thought she would start a massacre. Instead, they heard, "There have been uncountable casualties in this decade-long war. Both the righteous and demonic sects will need a century to recover afterward. Enough have died, and I've also done enough killing already." With a piece of black cloth in her hand, she turned and left, leaving the surviving cultivators looking at each other in disbelief. At the outskirts of the Xuanyuan sect's mountain range, Baili Qingmiao was unceasingly working to pick up the fallen cultivators, giving first aid to the survivors. She headed further and further, gradually leaving behind the other troops, and when she saw a black-robed figure on a riverbank, she quickly picked them up with the moonlit frost silk. "Thank heavens you're still alive! Oh my God, there's no flesh on your body. Your face is completely blackened. I can't tell which sect you're from. Are you a man or a woman? Don't give up. You must continue to hold on. Oh God. Qiu Tongxue's eyelids twitched, roused by the racker near her ears. She opened her eyes slightly and saw a girl in yellow robes treating her tearfully. Shut the hell up, Qiu Tongxue opened her mouth to say, but found that her throat had been burned and she could only make an inhuman rasping noise. You're still alive, Baili Qingmiao said, and started sobbing. Please don't die. Too many people have died. So many elders are gone now. Don't die. I don't want to see anyone die anymore. Qiu Tongxue. Dot. She opened her eyes, and for some reason, a line came to her mind. A single ray of the rising sun landed on Baili Qingmiao's body. Her expression was warm but resolute, with a beautiful and pure wish to save others. What was that rubbish? Qiu Tongxue wrinkled her blackened brows. How did such cheesy words suddenly appear in her head? As the sun rose, another battle elsewhere neared its end. The battling armies of the cultivators in the northern mountains of Xuanyuan sect were nearly evenly matched in strength, and in 10 years their numbers had decreased by more than half. The medicinal hall's stores collected over many years had all been used up, and even if more wounded arrived, nothing could be done for them. Altar Master Yuan was the only one of the altar masters who could still stand, and the righteous cultivators also only had a handful left who could move. Are we still fighting? Altar Master Yuan asked. The spiritual energy has returned, so if you keep fighting, everyone's sure to die. The righteous cultivators silently looked toward Wenren E's battle with 21 experts and shook their heads. 10 years of war had come to a cruel resolution. At the very least, they had managed to ensure the survival of the cultivation world and avoid a once-in-10 millennia calamity. Altar Master Yuan cupped his fist and said, In that case, we ask you kindly to leave Xuanyuan sect, and in return, promise not to attack while your backs are turned. After a moment of discussion among the righteous cultivators, they nodded and, carrying their allies, deployed a large flying boat and left Xuanyuan sect. The only participants left in the Great Sect War were its 22 top cultivators. Yeen Hanjiang had recuperated for many years and recovered from his injuries. He paid no mind to the retreating cultivators, only gazing at the far-away battlefield. The day passed, night fell, and stars appeared, but Polis was dark. Venerable! Yeen Hanjiang said frantically, getting to his feet with sword in hand. Stop looking. There's no way Wenren E will survive. Altar Master Yuan reassured at his side. He's surrounded by 21 high-level experts, and one of them is a Buddhist. Do you know how strong their edicts to deliver all living beings and let go of the blade are? A single sutra can make all your fighting intent vanish. Wenren E has defeated opponents stronger than him so many times by relying on passionate fighting intent. So, a Buddhist cultivator is his worst matchup. Without fighting intent, Wenren E is just an ordinary Mahayana cultivator. Altar Master Yuan really demonstrated the backstabbing nature of demonic sects. He had been saying Venerable, but now instantly switched to Wenren E, willing to abandon someone in an instant. After that reassurance, he spat a dead bug out of his mouth and stamped it under his heel, cursing lowly. Putting a heart-eating bug in me? I'll kill you dead. 10 years ago, while Wenren E was still alive, you already had a plan for controlling all the altar masters and sect protectors to steal his position, didn't you? Why didn't you die in the Great War, you little schemer? He might as well be dead, said Altar Master Yuan. His queen parasite was killed. Otherwise, how would you spit out his bug so easily? Even the merciless Altar Master Yuan, looking at the remnants of Xuanyuan sect, couldn't help but remark. There were too many deaths. The righteous sects were just trying to prevent the calamity of a millennium, said Altar Master Yuan. The demonic sects have actually gotten quite tame under the Venerable's management. We just mess with righteous cultivators, and don't even dare go after civilians anymore. The righteous sects taking the offensive and starting the Great Sect War, even using strategies like the Spirit Severing Array, was all to trick the heavens and mitigate the cleansing of the human world via a great disaster. Using this many human lives to ensure survival for the next 10,000 years can still be considered a worthwhile trade. We're all people who invite calamities. It's in our fate. Altar Master Yuan spoke some rare cultured words, then turned and saw Yeen Hanjiang had disappeared and started cursing again. Fuck! Where'd Yeen Hanjiang go? The people who could still move turned their heads painfully and found the spot where Yeen Hanjiang had sat conspicuously empty. And from deep within the mountains, in the Xuanyuan sect's forbidden ground, came the faint sound of drumming, each beat louder than the last. Oh God. Hearing Altar Master Yuan's words, Yeen Hanjiang understood what kind of attack the Venerable was facing. Fighting intent. If only there was fighting intent, the Venerable would not lose. But of the 3 battlefields, 2 of them had already laid down their flags, and the Venerable was up against the most powerful Buddhist cultivator of the Wuxiang Temple. There was no fighting intent for him. In his desperation, Yeen Hanjiang remembered the burning sky drum filled with the memories of the great demon war in the immortal realm. He instantly fused with the demon's sword and transformed into a hail of red blades to rush headlong to the burning sky drum. With the power of a void boundary cultivator, he used his own body to sound the drum. The first light drum beat seemed to resonate in Wenren E's heart. He slowly opened his eyes and saw a kind-faced old monk facing him, saying, Major General Wenren E, let go of your hate, set aside your blade, and you will be absolved of your sins. Major General, such a nostalgic title. It had even been 300 years since he'd last heard it. 300 years ago, he was still an ordinary person, and the When-rehn clan were loyal servants of the state. But the entire clan ended up executed. He hated. He resented. He wanted to kill every foolish ruler on the earth. But what happened afterward? Boom! A second beat struck heavily in Wenren E's heart. His brows rose, seeing a young child appearing in his memories, reaching out a tiny hand and grabbing the end of his robe. So much like a younger him, barely surviving a battle and being saved by the civilians living at the border, only to hear that the When-rehn clan had been exterminated to a man. Major General, the sea of suffering is boundless, but turn around and you will find the shore. The old abbot went back to reading sutras, and the fighting intent that had risen within Wenren E dissipated again. Bong! 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 3 urgent beats sounded, like a horn calling Wenren E to battle. He saw another image, a man in a ghost mask, embracing his robe before an ever-burning lamp and peacefully closing his eyes. Bong! 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 The sound of the burning sky drum was deafening, sounding like a voice by Wenren E's ear yelling, Venerable! Venerable! Wenren E opened his eyes fully and said to the monk, looking upon him with compassion before him, Great Master, if you want me to set down my blade, how about you first ask if my blade is willing? The Wuxiang Temple abbot shook his head, trembling. It seems we were just short. Along with his words, the illusion surrounding Wenren E shattered, and 21 experts brandished their bonded weapons at him. If he had awoken a second later, these 21 weapons would have destroyed him, body and soul. The drumbeats continued incessantly. Wenren E raised the 7-killing halberd and said in a clear voice, The fact that you could pressure this venerable to such an extent shows you are worthy of the full extent of this venerable strength. We're all at our limits, so in this last bout, let the heavens determine the survivors. Polish shone radiantly in the sky as Wenren E's halberd clashed with 21 bonded weapons. The force unleashed by 21 powerhouses clashing called down peals of thunder around them. As the Xuanyuan sect cultivators chatted idly and looked at the sky, Altar Master Yuan said in disbelief, The Venerable is actually still alive. How did he survive? He's fighting 21 experts. Is calling him Venerable again what's most important? Hurry up and set up the barrier. Do you want to die? Altar Master Yuan planted a foot in Ren Wei's rear end. Ren Wei hurriedly activated Shen Yuan's sex wards. The instant the barrier rose, a streak of red light flew out of it, charging into the battlefield without a second thought. Yeen Hanjiang was uncaring of how the aftermath of such powerful opponents clashing might cause him injury. His vision was a field of red, and he searched among rubble and ruins for Wenren E's figure. That limb wasn't his, and that weapon wasn't his. Where he was, where could he be? A monk's staff fell into the air, about to hit Yeen Hanjiang, but in that moment, a beaten-up halberd flew forth to shield him as if it had a will of its own, blocking the staff. Seeing the halberd, Yeen Hanjiang resumed human form. He held Wenren E's bonded weapon, and following its resonance, found the barely breathing Wenren E. He flew forward and scooped him up. His mouth felt numb from joy, and he found himself unable to speak. The two landed on flat ground. Yeen Hanjiang clutched Wenren E, trembling all over. Wenren E slowly raised a hand and stroked Yeen Hanjiang's cheek. "Protector Yeen, you really did save this Venerable," he said weakly. Chapter 15. Severing Blood and Engraving Soul. After regaining awareness with the help of the burning sky drum, Wenren E engaged 21 experts in a desperate battle to the death. He didn't know how many of them he had managed to kill, and how many had survived. Wenren E had originally planned to unleash all of his power and fight to his limits, to learn just what he was capable of. He had wanted to disregard everything else, but the drumbeats brought him back to his senses at the last moment. Yeen Hanjiang had not risked his life using Void Boundary stage power to activate the burning sky drum in order to see Wenren E die in battle. He had promised Yeen Hanjiang before the battle that he would survive. Wenren E would never go back on his word. At the very end, he held back a part of his power in order to defend himself, and so managed to preserve his life to be saved by Yeen Hanjiang. With his last breath, he let Yeen Hanjiang know that he was still alive before losing consciousness. His injuries were too severe, and while drifting in and out of consciousness, he could hear Yeen Hanjiang calling him, but his eyelids felt heavy, and he couldn't open them. In the original plot, Wenren E had lain unconscious for some time, and upon waking, saw Baili Qingmiao busy working before him. He saw a single ray of the rising sun land on Baili Qingmiao's body. Her expression was warm but resolute, with a beautiful and pure wish to save others. Seeing her bathed in that ray of sun, or perhaps divine light, the heart of the demonic sect leader was moved. At the time, Wenren E was not yet aware that his love tribulation had arrived, and only coldly told this righteous junior disciple that he could grant her one favor. Baili Qingmiao stared blankly for a moment, then shook her head and said, "I just need you to live." Wenren E had sustained heavy internal injuries, and also wasn't willing to return to Shangqing sect with Baili Qingmiao for treatment. Baili Qingmiao could only use the communication talisman Master Qingrong gave her to report back that she would be gone for a while. Before the war, Shangqing sect had given each of the support disciples a jade slip and rushed them through some medical knowledge and the locations of some magic herbs. During the 3 months Yeen Hanjiang had been cultivating, Baili Qingmiao and her fellow disciples were busy memorizing the jade slips and practicing medicinal spells. She realized Wenren E's injuries were too severe. The violet palace of his dantian was a mess, and its spiritual essence was almost completely drained. In order to save his life, Baili Qingmiao decided to take him to the 9 Cauldron Mountains, the location of the 9-yang soul-reviving flesh mushroom, which could bring back the dead and regrow flesh from bones. Oh, as recorded in her jade slip, sorry. Wenren E watched her coldly for the entire journey, as she climbed the mountain carrying him and did battle with the beasts guarding the mushroom. After she obtained the mushroom, she boiled it into broth and didn't take a spoonful for herself, feeding it all to Wenren E. In the book, after Wenren E was healed, he saw Baili Qingmiao's overjoyed expression, and his heart finally fell for her. He didn't reveal his identity, just left a token and told her she could use it to call him if she met with trouble. No matter what it was, Wenren would go through hell and high water to help her. Baili Qingmiao had never thought of receiving something in return from Wenren and was only happy she was able to save one more life. After bidding Wenren farewell, Baili Qingmiao returned to her sect, and when she saw her Wenzhao had lost his nascent soul, her heart froze in an instant. The gravely injured and despondent He Wenzhao said to Baili Qingmiao, "Shimei, when I was injured, all I wanted to do was see you one last time. But where were you then?" Baili Qingmiao was sobbing so hard she couldn't speak. She had just obtained the flesh mushroom, but used it on a stranger instead of her Shixiong. She asked her elders for a way to save He Wenzhao and set out alone toward the Golden Coast cliffs. Along the way, she bumped into Wenren who had been watching her all that time and now accompanied her on her journey. This time, the one saving Wenren was Hanjiang, who didn't know where the flesh mushroom grew. The Venerable was unconscious, so all he could do was bring him to the small mountain valley where he'd begun cultivating. This was the small sect that Wenren had once led, which he brought Hanjiang to after picking him up. After Wenren unified the demonic sects, he secretly gave this place to Hanjiang and set up wards around it. It belonged to Hanjiang alone, and no one else knew it. While Wenren was in battle, Hanjiang had noticed how Altar Master Zhen had dropped his title. The demonic sects were rife with ambition, and from the protectors and altar masters to the common cultivators, each and every one would kick you while you were down. If Hanjiang brought a heavily injured Wenren back to Xuanyuan's sect, Yanyan would probably be the first in line to kill him. When the Venerable was at his full power, the Xuanyuan sect all stood behind him. But when he was weak, Xuanyuan's sect was a den of cannibals. Since Hanjiang didn't dare bring Wenren to Xuanyuan's sect, he only had two options. First, the small border town where he had grown up, and second, the place the Venerable had taken him to train when young. Holding Wenren he dove through the waterfall he once cultivated in front of into the small cave behind it, rich in spiritual energy and well suited for recovery. The Venerable was seriously injured. Hanjiang placed him down on his back and took out all the medicine in his storage belt, picking out some milder ones that could replenish spiritual essence and shoving them in Wenren mouth. Wenren had no spiritual energy and was unable to swallow the pills. Hanjiang hesitated for several moments, then, after saying, "Excuse my rudeness," pried open Wenren mouth and, with an inch of distance between them, exhaled a mouthful of spiritual energy into Wenren He acted with extreme care, terrified of touching his Venerable's pale lips with his own. After Wenren had taken the medicine, Hanjiang also poured the remaining dregs of his spiritual essence into him and cycled it through his body once. After feeling his Venerable's essence begin circulating on its own and absorbing the medicine, he breathed a sigh of relief. After relaxing, Hanjiang found himself wobbling on his feet. He coughed up a mouthful of blood and collapsed at Wenren feet. The old sect master of Xuanyuan sect had been at the peak of Mahayana, but while using the burning sky drum, he had been trapped by its illusions and suffered chi deviation. Hanjiang was barely in void boundary stage. After forcibly activating the burning sky drum and suffering the backlash of its violent energy, his internal organs had been heavily damaged. Single-mindedly desiring to save Wenren he hadn't even noticed his own state or felt the pain. Only after he revived Wenren did Hanjiang notice that he was on his last legs. Waking up after absorbing the medicine, Wenren found himself in a dark and damp cave, with a black-clothed man lying at his feet, face pressed against the cold stone. Turning him over, he found green lichun smeared on his face, making him look like the victim of some horror from a folk ghost story. When Wenren tried to channel energy, pain shot through his dantian like it was tearing apart. He took off his black robe and saw that his body was covered with wounds from swords, knives, whips, staves, seemingly every kind of wound that could be made by 18 different magic weapons. His physical injuries weren't a big deal, but what was more important was that the violet palace of his dantian had been destroyed, and he had drained his spiritual essence using the 7-killing halberd. Without the flesh mushroom, he might not recover after recuperating for 100 years. He struggled to sit up and lift Hanjiang in his arms, and felt that Hanjiang's clothes were damp. He opened his robe and saw that his thin body looked like it'd been slashed up by a blade before being stitched up by thin thread. It was hard to find an undamaged patch of skin on him. Wenren E was aghast at the sight of his split-open flesh. He placed a hand on Hanjiang's chest, trying to heal him, but he couldn't call up a single wisp of spiritual energy. Powerless, he could only sit down next to Hanjiang and let out a despairing laugh. In the 300 years since he'd entered the Dao, he'd never before been in such a pathetic state. He had no way to heal himself. In the book, Baili Qingmiao had found the flesh mushroom to save him, but in order to change the plot, Wenren E had given up on the easy way out and picked a painful and arduous path for himself. Protector Yeen, Wenren E said lightly. The most difficult path in this Venerable's life was 300 years ago, when I dug through that mass grave to find my family. There were 273 corpses of the Wenzhao clan there, all beheaded. Criminals would not get a burial. And after the execution, the heads would be burned and bodies thrown into a mass grave. 7 days had already passed by the time Wenren E made it back to the capital, and the bodies had started to decompose. There was no way to tell anyone apart. He dug through the corpse pile day and night, dragging out 296 headless corpses. The youngest was just 3 months old. Aside from the few with unique statures, Wenren E had no way of telling apart the remaining 237 corpses. The bodies of the criminals were mixed in, so Wenren E didn't even know which were his relatives. The entire clan had been loyal to the end, yet they were killed, and their corpses desecrated. At 16, Wenren E knelt before 296 headless corpses, crying and howling, unable to vent his hatred. The Wuxiang Temple abbot's power had been great, and led Wenren E to uncover memories that had been forgotten 300 years ago. He glanced over at Hanjiang's closed eyes, and his gaze held a weak smile. Protector Yeen, when this Venerable walked past that corpse pile and saw a hand grab me, do you know how happy I was? 100 years ago, when Wenren E thought he'd already forgotten the past, that tiny hand reached out for the train of his robes. He picked that child up out of the corpse pile and felt his neck to check that he wasn't a beheaded corpse. He pressed an ear against the child's chest, and that weak heartbeat was like music to his ears. At that moment, the cold and heartless Wenren E held little Hanjiang in his arms, not noticing the tears that slipped from his eyes. It was like he was finally free of the powerlessness he had felt at 16. He had finally managed to save someone. Wenren E held Hanjiang's wrist. The child he'd saved back then was going to die soon. The silly child was already heavily injured, but had given the last of his spiritual essence to Wenren E, throwing away his last lease on life. Hanjiang, if this Venerable can save you once, he can save you twice. If this Venerable doesn't allow you to die, then you can't die. Wenren E looked at the demonic sword at Hanjiang's side as his expression darkened. Hanjiang never put his sword away in a storage item, stubbornly holding it like a sentinel, yet the sword had a will of its own. After becoming a cultivator, Wenren E had stolen many techniques from other demonic sects. There had been one which was the hardest to use of all, but perfect for this moment. Your name is Qingmiao, Wenren E said to the sword. Back when he handed the sword to Hanjiang, he never told him its name. Calling the name would call awake to demonic sword's consciousness. Qingmiao, hearing its own name, trembled lightly and left its sheath, hovering before Wenren E. Many sinister patterns appeared on the surface of its blade, an appearance Hanjiang had never seen. Looking at the sword, Wenren recited a spell, and the same patterns appeared on his body. The 7-killing halberd sensed what its master was doing and hummed plaintively. Wenren raised a hand. "Don't fuss." The halberd reluctantly trembled a few times, but eventually came under Wenren control and quieted down. Qingmiao transformed into a hail of blood swords and, with Wenren spell, stabbed deep into the patterns on his body, pinning him to the cave wall. Oh God. Blood flowed down the stone, dripping into Hanjiang's face. Hanjiang's eyelashes twitched painfully a few times, but in the end, he was unable to wake and see the Venerable he wanted to protect at all costs engrave his body with the Qingmiao blade and go down a path few survived. With thousands of swords in his body, Wenren never stopped reciting. He slowly raised the hand and drew an array in mid-air with difficulty, matching the patterns on his body. The lifelong blood soul-locking array. After the array was completed, the lines drawn in crimson light melded into Wenren soul, using the body to sever the blood and using the blood to engrave the soul. Qingmiao left Wenren body, and the instant the blades were pulled out, Wenren body burst into a cloud of bloody mist, dispersing within the cave. The 7-killing halberd let out a lamenting cry, and the 6th star of the southern dipper was gradually stained blood red. After several minutes, the blood mist gradually condensed, solidifying into a human figure. At the moment when his body and soul were dispersed, he endured the soul-splitting pain and, through his resolution, managed to complete the blood-severing array. There was a lost technique in the cultivation world called the blood-severing art. The user needed to carve the blood marks into their flesh, then voluntarily destroy their body and soul, and use the technique at the moment before death. It would fuse one's soul and body together, and from then on, if a single drop of one's blood remained in the world, they would not die. Only one person has succeeded at the blood art in hundreds of thousands of years. It was not because it was weak, but because it had such a low chance of success. Without an iron will, no one could even bear the pain. After it was completed, one could recover from any injury, no matter how severe, as long as they had sufficient spiritual energy. Wenren put the black robe he discarded back on, the pain of his soul shattering still lingering in his body. He frowned slightly and took a pill from his sleeve to swallow. After he had mostly recovered, he picked up Hanjiang and sent the spiritual energy he had just restored into his meridians, chasing out the murderous aura of the burning sky drum. For the next few months, Wenren stayed in that small cave, absorbing spiritual energy to transfer to Hanjiang, slowly restoring his damaged meridians. In a distant location, Qiu Congxue was being carried on Baili Qingmiao's back as she scaled a mountain. Qiu Congxue had said to Baili Qingmiao, "Leave me be. Don't take me back to your sect," before passing out. She was injured worse than Wenren. The Buddhist light was terribly effective against ghost cultivators, and all the spirits she kept inside her body had been sublimated. She had no power left. Baili Qingmiao assumed the reason Qiu Congxue didn't want to return to her sect was that she didn't want to face her compatriots like this, injured so severely with no hope of recovery. She was determined to save her fellow cultivator. After reporting the situation with her message talisman, she tied the unconscious Qiu Congxue to her back and set off to 9 Cauldrons Mountain. It was said that 9 Cauldrons Mountain was a dwelling place of immortals. Even a Mahayana cultivator there would have their powers suppressed to the level of an ordinary person. Baili Qingmiao was unable to fly, and the cliffs were treacherous. She gripped a vine and climbed, gritting her teeth and holding back tears. She fell countless times on the way up, until her face and body were bruised and battered. She thought of giving up, but each time she remembered how the person on her back was relying on her, and how she had been unable to save so many people in the Great Sect War, and she gritted her teeth and encouraged herself to continue climbing. By the time she reached the top, she was about to collapse from exhaustion. The flesh mushroom was very well hidden, impossible for ordinary people to find. After Baili Qingmiao collapsed on the mountaintop, the mushroom took her for a corpse and, drawn by her divinity, rose up from the ground in order to eat her. A spiritual snake who protected the flesh mushroom slithered up and, seeing that the mushroom had emerged, bit down on it and began wrestling with it. Baili Qingmiao was roused by the noise and was overjoyed to see the flesh mushroom right before her. With the dregs of her strength, she slew the snake and picked the flesh mushroom, then cooked it in a stew together with the snake. The aroma emanating from the flesh mushroom healed Baili Qingmiao's wounds, and also allowed her to rise from the 5th level of core formation all the way to the final level. If she drank the broth, she could probably ascend on the spot, but she had no desire of it for herself. She let Qiu Tongxue soak in the broth and watched as her flesh regrew on her bones. "Oh, so you're a girl!" she exclaimed happily. After all of Qiu Tongxue's organs had been restored, Baili Qingmiao fed every spoonful of the broth to her. Qiu Tongxue's realm was instantly restored to Mahayana, her skin rosy, looking to be in perfect health. After waking, Qiu Tongxue saw a beautiful girl watching her with chin in one hand, expression filled with genuine joy. "Senior, you're healed at last." "Healed?" Qiu Tongxue sat up and felt something was off with her body. She checked and saw that she had flesh now. A passage appeared in Qiu Tongxue's mind. He saw Baili Qingmiao's gaze filled with concern and that empty pot of broth which had all been given to him, and let out a sigh. "Well, that's it, I guess." Qiu Tongxue had no idea where these words came from, but she nodded in agreement. "That's it." What is?" Baili Qingmiao said, blinking naively as she gazed towards Qiu Tongxue. This altar master was a perfectly good ghost cultivator, willingly offering her own life to hungry ghosts in order to cultivate the Asura path and reach Mahayana. Qiu Tongxue turned a threatening gaze toward Baili Qingmiao. Baili Qingmiao finally realized something was wrong. She backed away a few steps and fell to the ground, saying in a wavering voice, "Senior, what's wrong?" "What's wrong?" Qiu Tongxue said, rising and approaching her. Her warm fingers clenched around Baili Qingmiao's neck. "Do you know how hard it was to give up my body? You went and restored it with a few spoonfuls of soup. I'll kill you." Okay, so we covered a lot of ground today. Let's go over my notes, which, since we covered a lot of ground, well, got a lot of notes. So the first thing I want to say, just like going back to the beginning, starting at the top, is we're going all the way to Baili Qingmiao returning back from her 6-month adventure, right? I get that the publics at Shangqing sect are records. No, strike that, reverse it, Willy Wonka. I get that the records at Shangqing sect are public, but like, couldn't you just go ask him what he'd been up to if you were oh so excited? Like, I don't know. I'm not saying this is a fault of hers or anything, but I just find it odd that the first thing she decided to do, if she supposedly missed her Shishyong so much, was go to check his public records instead of just going to find him and check up on him instead. I don't know, like, so in my mind, I just think if I went on a 6-month vacation or something, shoot, even if I went on a week vacation and I'm like, I miss my husband so much, the first thing I'm going to do is come home to see my husband, not come home to, I don't know, look at his phone or, if I had like his login information for his job to, see if he's been working. I'm like, let me just type, log in and see what my husband's been up to. No, I'm going to go see my husband and ask my husband, hey, like, what have you been up to while I've been gone? So I just thought that was so odd. But nevertheless, he's still in that point. Yaowen clearly is not the one to go to if you're a man and you want someone to have your back or cover for you. Did he do it the first time around? Absolutely. But clearly he wasn't thinking and just said what he said, and oh my god, he completely ruined that for Wenzhao. Although it needed to be ruined for him because Wenzhao is a sleazeball. So the other thing, just all still in this arena, I think that Xu Yanyan is wrong in her assessment of Wenzhao. With her saying that he truly does love Baili Qingmiao and like no one can reach her basically. And he has this separation of his heart and his body in his mind, and that he thinks he's not doing anything wrong when he's just, you know, seeking physical temporary relief. The reason I say I think she's wrong, not necessarily in the love aspect, because people, you can love someone and love them incorrectly. So maybe he does actually love her, but the issue is I don't think he thinks he's not doing wrong. He knows full well what he's doing is wrong, because when we go back to their first interaction, at least in the book, when she said, you know, basically, as long as no one knows, before she said that, he was already feeling guilty because he knew what he was doing was wrong. So then for, you know, her to think that way, it's like, no, he knows what he's doing. If he truly believed what he was doing was not wrong, he would not hide, he would not lie, he would not be making gesticulations at her to not say certain things. He wouldn't have told Yao and Dan, you know, to, hey, you know, he wouldn't have given him the look that first time around. So that's the only thing I can say about that. Then the next thing I wanted to go to is, I mean, I'm with Wenren and Xu Yanyan. There is something wrong with Baili Qingmiao because, okay, so I definitely understand her not wanting to kill Wenzhao. That was kind of extreme for Wenren to just say that. Like, he would do that, sure, maybe, but she's not that kind of person. And yeah, she's not going to do that. But for her to be like, he wouldn't dare use an innocent person like that. It's just like, ma'am, are you this naive? My freaking God. Anyway, next, because of the meeting that the demonic cultivators had, and it actually throughout these chapters on multiple occasions, it was like, oh, Wenzhao, Wenren was looking at this person with approval, looked at that person with approval. This is how a demonic cultivator should act. This is how a demonic cultivator should act. My brain is just imagining him going, how, which is good, by the way, how, in Mandarin. I just imagine him going that way in his brain. Anyway, let's move on. I want to make a quick apology, just in case I did it, I don't know. But there is one of these valleys, it's Biluo Valley. I feel like a couple of times I might have said Bailuo. Why? I have no idea. But it's Biluo. Whenever you see B-I in Mandarin, it's going to be B, so yeah. Anyway, let's keep going through my notes. Just got like 5 more or so, I don't know. So it was really nice to see Yeen Hanjiang like just risk it all for Wenren in battle. Also, a 10-year battle just sounds so awful. I don't know how long wars traditionally last, but I'm like, gosh, even 1 year is long to me. Like, why are we not done yet? So anyway, it was just really nice to see that, you know, out of everyone in the Xuanyuan sect, truly, Yeen Hanjiang is someone who is faithful to Wenren you know, despite everyone else would definitely be clawing at the opportunity, like that Wenren E guy, you know, to take over, or Song Xiuxue. The other thing I thought was quite interesting was basically the demonic sect having let the battle go on for that long and waiting until the 10 years passed and was like, we could have been and ruined this. I think I need to go back and listen to it again just to like fully absorb it. But in the moment as I was reading, I understood why. And so I think it was a clever plan. Anyway, I'm going to listen to myself, you know. The next thing is, I wonder why Qiu Tongxue is hearing lines from the book. Like at first I was like, okay, she read it, and based on her reaction, I was like, okay, no, she hasn't read it. So how is it in her conscious? And is it in her conscious just because she swapped fates, clearly, with Wenren And so I guess we'll just see how that goes. But it was interesting because as soon as it said that Baili Qingmiao picked up a black robe person. I was like, ooh, is it Tongshui? Only for it to be her. And I was like, oh, are they really, really gonna swap roles? So she's gonna get the flesh mushroom, and I was like, is she gonna fall in love with Baili Qingmiao? Which, based on the way it ended, maybe not. But hey, there's still room out. You can want to kill someone first and then want to screw them later. We'll see. But yeah, I wasn't expecting that ending though, for her just wanting to kill her. Because she at least restored you all the way back to Mahayana stage, so you don't have your ghosts anymore or something. But I don't know, like, is it really that bad? Can you not do something else then? Or I don't know, like, you still have your power. It's just not in the same way. So I don't know. We'll just keep reading on that. The other thing, okay, y'all, is it just me, or are the righteous sects seeming a little unrighteous and the demonic sects seeming more righteous than the righteous sect? Not to say that the demonic sect is righteous, because they're not, but the righteous sect, number one, they are the ones who actually started this war. And it didn't really seem like, I mean, we haven't gotten enough information on like all the other people, but it didn't really seem like they were really doing anything for real, except messing with the cultivators. I know Shu Yanyan, you know, taking the essence from people. Okay, yeah, that's bad. But like, start a war bad? Probably not. You know, and hearing that When-rehn actually, God, that vehicle is loud. I'm sorry. Anyway, seeing that When-rehn actually tamed them, you know, it's just kind of like, I wonder how bad the demonic sect actually is. And then that's going to bring, well, let's just go ahead to the last thing. Yeen Hanjiang risking it all, like I mentioned before, but then really risking it all by beating on that drum that is known to, you know, basically kill the person that uses it. And him not even aware of, because of adrenaline, aware of his own pain and that he was on his last leg because he was trying to get Wenren to safety. To me, it was just crazy how when Wenren woke up and saw him, it's like, I saved your life so that you don't die, and now well, I'm sorry, let me put it this way. Yeen Hanjiang was like, I risked my life doing something that I'll probably die from to save you so you don't die. And then when Ren turns around and it's like, huh, I'm gonna save your life doing something that people usually die from so that you don't die. I'm like, whoa. This whole blood severing art, the lifeblood soul locking array thing he was doing, that seems pretty scary. And I'll tell y'all right now, I don't like pain. I don't want to endure pain. And so I wouldn't do that. I ain't even gonna lie. I wouldn't do that even for my husband. If we were cultivators, if we lived in this universe, I wouldn't be doing that because, ah! And so that right there just already shows, you know, how much Wenren cares for Yeen Hanjiang in just a short amount of time, you know, after he read the book, getting an understanding, more understanding of his loyalty. It's nice to see that he cherishes that. So let's just see what happens next. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this extra long reading. We will be reading again. Just a quick reminder, Mondays are going to be long videos. So if you need to, because like I said, I've seen people do it before, just put where you left off in the comment section, and then you can come back, or I don't know, save it in a note on your phone or something if you can't listen to all of this in one go. And then, you know, we're doing Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Still just learning to navigate this. What has it been? 7 months or so since I started this channel. But, you know, things in life change, and I'm still learning how to navigate between everything that I'm doing. So, yeah. That's pretty much it. I hope you all have a great day or evening, and I will see you all next time. Don't forget to put your thoughts and reactions in the comment section. I cannot wait to interact with you all. And 我爱你们。